Return to the past with a warehouse. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51. Fortunately, all partners are worthy of the world. Li Ju was very satisfied with his partners. Not to mention the honest mute, the inability to speak, is the most reliable trait at this stage, and his own lonely character undoubtedly adds an extra layer of protection. In addition, the mute's carefulness, stability and relative dyeing and weaving Chen was the first partner Li Ju chose for himself. At that time, he asked his helpers to take him to the cloth shop with the best shopkeeper, and met dyeing and weaving Chen there. Facts have proved that dyeing and weaving Chen is definitely a talent. This talent refers not only to making a lot of money, but also to his excellent qualities such as not asking questions that should not be asked, doing things that should be done well, being well informed, and having a wide network of contacts. Li Ju has been forcibly explaining his products with passed down from ancestors, but is this excuse really impeccable? It is difficult to see through but not speak out, and dyeing and weaving Chen does it very well. Dyeing and weaving Chen's acumen in business is also rare. The last time he sold soap, dyeing and weaving Chen said he would come back a few days later, because it would take time for him to show the advantages of soap. But last time I was lucky, Yunan had laid out the plan first, so I was able to come back early. The same is true for selling cement this time. The benefits of cement need time to be discovered, and its usage is not simple. Adding water and boiling, adding stones and sand, etc. all require a certain proportion, time, and skills. If I just throw it in the store and sell it, I'm afraid it will take a long time to open up the market. Li Ju smiled and said, "You hit the nail on the head. This is my plan. First, the walls and floor of the store will be covered with cement. Cement is cheap, simple, and neat. Although it won't be very refined, we are in the wholesale business of traveling merchants after all. The most important thing is efficiency, rather than a good experience, so cement is feasible. In this way, the merchants who come to choose goods can experience the benefits of cement for themselves. Second, I plan to renovate the roads from the dock to the store, and from the carriage to the store, and turn them into cement or cement slabs. From the first moment they get off the dock, they will feel the benefits of cement roads. Third, I want to talk to County Magistrate Zhao about using cement to renovate the houses and roads of Fashion Hall, Jushan House, etc. Upon hearing this, dyeing and weaving Chen clapped his hands and said, "The first two are fine. They are the means used by us merchants. What do you think of the latter one? Just think of it as a way to accumulate virtue. Our business deals with thousands of households, so it is always a good thing to have a good reputation. Moreover, cement is cheap. Even if we don't mention it, the county magistrate will mention it sooner or later. It will be too late for us to mention it when others take the initiative to bring it up. It is better to take the initiative to bring it up. Moreover, these places are where extremely poor people gather. When ordinary people in the county see that they can afford cement here, they will naturally be willing to use it. Cement is not a precious item that is used today and will not be used tomorrow. People have to be willing to use it to repair pig pens and build toilets, so that we can do long-term business." After listening to what Li Ju said, dyeing and weaving Chen understood. Li Ju and he became partners and gave him the profit, but Li Ju himself did not plan to spend money on wine and women after making money. Dyeing and weaving Chen did not understand Li Ju's thoughts, but he had some vague perception, but he could not say it. Can you say that Li Ju and the county magistrate are the same person? On the surface, they are indeed the same. They both hope that the people can live and work in peace and have enough food and clothing. If they only talk about the idea of governing a place, they may be able to become bosom friends. But their inner thoughts are definitely different. It doesn't matter if they are different, just follow Li Ju and eat meat. Dyeing and weaving Chen was in charge of the shop decoration and took away the cement paste shop work. As for the road construction and renovation of Fashion Hall and other poverty relief institutions, Li Ju needed to discuss it himself, and the county magistrate had to agree and help. Both things were urgent, so after 2 days, after confirming that the traditional cement in the barren mountain had been burned out and could be used, Li Ju took the initiative to find Zhao Li and asked him to help connect with Zhao County Magistrate to discuss the road construction and renovation of the poverty relief institution. It was already the 20th day of the first lunar month, and the Zhao family was busy making spring clothes. Li Ju specifically asked dyeing and weaving Chen, and finally chose cloth as a gift. Abandoning the common fabrics of this era, such as Yu Yaoniang, Li Ju selected a roll of chiffon with a spray-painted apricot flower pattern and a roll of hard bone yarn with the same pattern from the warehouse, specially selected chemical fiber materials, highlighting the wrinkle resistance that ancient natural fabrics did not have, and then rolled up a few rolls of pure gold thread chiffon with bright red and green flowers and sent them to the Zhao family. Before leaving, Zhao Li thought about the dusty yard in his own yard, and the clothes that the girls usually wore were blue, grey, brown and ochre cotton and linen cloth. He put out a few rolls of chiffon with peach blossom branches in different colors and asked Yu Yaoniang and Sanjiu to share them with everyone and make some beautiful clothes. The trip to the Zhao family was very smooth. The whole family of Zhao County Magistrate had a very good impression of Li Ju, generous, free and easy, rich, and could also bring a message to his family's future. After understanding Li Ju's intention, County Magistrate Zhao stopped drinking tea, eating snacks, and looking at the beautiful cloths. He left a sentence to his wife, "Leave me half a piece of hard-boned yarn," and hurriedly took Li Ju to visit County Magistrate Wang. County Magistrate Wang was a little surprised that the two of them came to visit. Although Li Ju had guessed that Mr. Wang was the county magistrate, he couldn't help pretending to be surprised when they really met. After a few more jokes and greetings, it was already dusk. The kitchen of County Magistrate Wang's house sent a few dishes of side dishes and rice, and the three of them discussed the following matters while eating. It was mainly County Magistrate Wang asking questions, Li Ju answering, and County Magistrate Zhao drumming up support, and it went very smoothly. Road construction and house renovation are not trivial matters, and they also involve a lot of things such as maps, plans, boundaries, household books, etc. However, since both parties are interested, and it is a good thing, it is not difficult to discuss. County Magistrate Wang was naturally very happy. He hoped that the people under his jurisdiction would have a good upbringing when they were young and a place to rely on when they were old, so he set up a relief office and presided over the construction of several welfare institutions such as the Jueyang Hall, Fushan Hall, and Jushan House. Every day when he opened his eyes, there were dozens or even hundreds of people in the welfare institutions of the relief office who needed food and drink. Where could the rice and grain come from? Although the pawn shop sold face and sent all the odd jobs there, at least the people in the relief office could have a meal and not starve to death. However, Qingshan County was too small and there were not so many jobs to support a family, except for the people at the top, who were used to using people from the landlords and wealthy businessmen in the middle. Every household was self-reliant. If there was really something that was not available, they would ask others to help with short-term work. Therefore, the people in these welfare institutions could only barely survive, and they had an extra shed to shelter them from the rain, compared to the beggars outside. As for the collapsed houses, they could only plunder some palm leaves, thatch and other things to reinforce them. Li Ju proposed to renovate the house for the Poor Relief Office, and make the best use of the manpower of the Poor Relief Office, and provide food and money according to the rules of Li Yuan. Of course, in order to prevent people from taking advantage of the situation and being lazy, Li Ju would send a foreman to stay on site. County Magistrate Wang quickly calculated the account. Hey, those wages can be exchanged for the worst rice and grain, to last for a month. Li Ju is willing to pay this wages, which is a blessing for the Poor Relief Office. What else can he be dissatisfied with? As for road construction, there is no need to mention it. Since ancient times, building bridges and paving roads have been great good deeds. County Magistrate Wang was also worried that the roads in the county were crooked. On rainy days, they were either flooded or muddy and crooked. After every rain, they had to be repaired. If he wanted to renovate and repair thoroughly, he lacked money and people. The section of road planned by Li Ju was more than 1 mile in total, and it connected the dock to the inner city. If it was really done, it would be a solid convenience. County Magistrate Wang was willing to spend a lot of effort to promote both things. He just moved his mouth, and County Magistrate Zhao would naturally watch the people below do their work. It was Li Ju's job to provide money and manpower. In the end, he was happy, his political achievements were good, and the people benefited, and he had the best of all three. The dinner was a great success for both the host and the guests. County Magistrate Wang personally sent the two of them to the gate, watched Li Ju and County Magistrate Zhao get on the car, and waved his hand eagerly. Li Ju was a little touched. County Magistrate Wang was a jinshi from the Imperial examination, and he had no money to bribe, so he only got the job of County Magistrate. No matter how poor a person is, he is still a jinshi. What does it mean for a jinshi to send a commoner and a clerk to the door and get on the car? It's a humble way to make friends. With such a county magistrate, everything is much simpler. There is no need to mention the help of the government order, and there is no need to worry about the local wealthy families teaming up to plot against him. The credit for building bridges and paving roads to relieve the poor is not given to him in vain. Chapter 52 Li Ju's original intentions. After getting the support from the government, Li Ju came back and asked Chu Sanlang to send a message to Dyeing and Weaving Chen to start the renovation. Then he went back to his room and sat down. He first checked all the things in the house outside, and then fell into deep thought over the population book at home. In order to provide relief to the poor during the day, he came up with the idea of asking the people from the Poor Relief Office to participate in the renovation of the house. It was right. He really couldn't spare any manpower here. Moreover, directly asking the people from the Poor Relief Office to participate in the construction can be regarded as relief by work. It can not only solve the labor shortage, but also provide food for the elderly, women and children. However, in order to explain the use of cement and popularize the role of cement, Li Ju had to choose someone to supervise the construction site. Who should he choose? Li Ju looked at the names of Wu Dalang, Chusan and others for a long time, but he couldn't make up his mind. If Azu was a family member, it would be very suitable, but unfortunately, Azu had his own tasks and had to focus on farming in Lee Garden. He stayed in the barren mountain these days. If he was asked to go, I don't know if he would be willing to go. Wu Dalang came to report the preparations for spring plowing, the situation of livestock, and the quantity and storage of bamboo and wood chips. He was a bit stuttering. He was also an honest farmer. He could still keep things under control in the barren mountain. It was purely because RZHU and others were there, so they could keep things under control. Moreover, the long-term workers were people who had signed contracts with the Li family and were very obedient. It was impossible to expect Wu Dalang to manage the construction sites outside and deal with the government. It was good enough if he was not scared. Chu Sanlang brought back a message to convey the reply from Dyeing and Weaving Chen. He was well organized and comprehensive. He was a good boy who was eloquent and steady. But the child was too young and might not be able to keep the uncles and aunts outside under control. It would be best if he could learn more from experienced people. Li Ju planned to arrange for him to train with Dyeing and Weaving Chen for 2 years and then let him go out to work on his own. Not to mention Shibazai Olian and others, they were still children. Even if they could be used, they were child laborers. Li Ju was not so cruel. The mute couldn't leave for the time being, and Li Ju really needed this person to help with the inventory. It's still unknown whether his muteness can be cured. At present, it seems that the county doctors can't do anything about the mute's muteness. Li Ju plans to invite a famous doctor from the prefecture to check everyone's physical condition in a while, treat the disease, if there is any, and prevent it, if there is no disease. By the way, check the mute as well. If he can be cured, he will be a great help in 2 years. Just when I thought of the mute, Sanjiu and Yu Yaoniang came to report the progress of the women's needlework. How many clothes were made to be enough for how many people, how much cloth and needlework was spent, what things needed to be purchased, and the orders for Yuhua skirts and large collared shirts. Since the Lantern Festival, Yuhua skirts have become a must-have skirt for almost everyone in Qingshan County, and even men have secretly made Yuhua clothes to follow the trend. and this trend also has the intention of expanding outward, and it has almost affected Suzhou and Jinling at this time. Those who have the ability to do it themselves did it themselves, but they are still at the stage of imitating. Although the lights were bright on the Lantern Festival, the light was dim, and I couldn't remember many details. It was good enough to imitate them roughly. In addition, only Li Ju could produce those special fabrics, so the imitations basically only looked like 5 colors, either too dim or not in good shape, not to mention glory flow. If you want the original, you can only come to Li Yuan. Li Ju didn't intervene in this matter, but handed it over to Sanjiu and Wu Dalong's wife and Yu Yaoniang to deal with it. Sanjiu first gave a yuhua skirt to the wife of Zhao County Magistrate and the wife of Dyeing and Weaving Chen. The two gave some wages, and then wore them out a few times. Soon, the wives and concubines of other wealthy merchants and landlords sent people to send money to ask for one. Some wanted light and fluttering ones, while others wanted gold jacquard ones. Most of the people who came to them were generous, saying that they didn't like the ones outside and wanted skirts that were almost as beautiful but different from those. Sanjiu reported the routine to Li Ju, then stole a glance at Li Ju's expression and cautiously asked about the matter of people outside asking them to make yuhua skirts. Li Ju originally planned to let them run the clothing business, and when he heard that there were customers coming so soon, how could he not agree? He agreed very readily, but there was another calculation about the material cost, etc. This is considered as your two. If there are other people working together, then they will be counted together. Private property. As long as it does not delay my work, I'm happy to hear about it. After you leave this garden, needlework will be the foundation of your livelihood. However, I'm not responsible for the needles, threads, cloths, laces, etc. used in your work, and you have to buy them by yourselves. The specific purchasing method, especially the conversion of the cloth specially supplied by Li Ju, still needs to be decided by Chen Lei. Sanjiu understood that Li Ju meant that he would not provide the raw materials for free, which was a good thing, because it showed that what Li Ju said, "Consider it your private work," was true, and he was really willing to let them have their own business. Many husbands might not be so indulgent to their wives, not to mention that they both belong to Li Ju physically, and all their output should belong to Li Ju. Zhao Sanjiu took Yaoniang and bowed to Li Ju. "Master, you have such love and care, and we two sisters are deeply grateful, but we don't know how to repay you." If Li Ju said that he didn't want them to repay, they might have been suspicious. Saying that he wanted their contributions was not Li Ju's original intention. After thinking for a while, Li Ju said, "In the future, there will probably be more women employed by Li Garden to do weaving and needlework. By then, I will probably have more different styles of clothes and decorations to sell. If you want to repay me, you should discipline the women who will be employed by me in the future, teach them the rules and manners of Li Garden, and teach them to make clothes and accessories until they can earn a good salary with ease." Sanjiu thought that Li Ju would have already made clothing business in the future and looked down on her and Yaoniang's small business, so she kept Li Ju's request in mind and responded softly. The two girls reported everything, and RZHU came again. Because he knew that the girls were waiting inside, he folded his hands in the yard outside and waited for the girls to leave before coming in. Sanjiu was about to leave when he heard Shivalang say that RZHU was here. He could not help but turn around and whispered to Li Ju, "Master, I don't have any problem with RZHU. It's just that Master seems to have a lot of properties, many of which other families don't have. Since he has been told the truth about some things in the garden, that should be enough. In the future, cement, soap and other things will be important and rare. How can everyone have them? If the news leaks out, it will be said that it was not him who said it. It's better to avoid suspicion." Li Ju actually hesitated whether to be on guard against RZHU, but soon he stopped hesitating. Let's not talk about whether County Magistrate Wang has the leisure to learn the skills of Li Garden. Even if someone from outside learns it, what can it do? With the current ridiculously low production capacity, what if there is one more person who knows how to burn cement, burn pen refills, and make soap? How big a workshop can this person organize? How much can the monthly output increase? How much market share can it meet? Can it squeeze out Li Ju's business? Even if outsiders take over the market, what does it matter? Does Li Ju lack money? Does he lack the means to make money? If he just wants to live happily, selling 100 queer bells and donating a title, 3 wives, 4 concubines, delicate slaves and beautiful maids, isn't that good? Li Ju still thinks that the scope of his influence is too small. If there are 100 people who understand technology, they can go to 100 places to spread the seeds of technology and create 1,000 jobs. How much economy can he drive now? Sanjiu finished his advice carefully and waited for Li Ju's response. Li Jiu thought for a long time and said, people who can learn it have skills. Just like the Yuhua skirt, I really hope that you and Yu Yaoniang can learn how to make it and even create more skirts with different patterns in the future and then go out to open a clothing shop. Focus on your own business, live a good life, and work hard to live a good life. I'm alone and I can't do all the business by myself and I can't just focus on my own business. This goes against my original intention. A kind of eagerness arose in Sanjiu's heart, an eagerness to own property, be the master of the house, and live freely, accompanied by a little bit of confusion and fear. Chapter 53, The Poorhouse's Response. Li Ju sent Sanjiu and Yaoniang out to do their own business. He was worrying about who would be the supervisor on the cement construction site outside, and also supervise whether the soap and other items to be sent to several welfare institutions in the future were in place. At this time, Wang Dechen came with the last batch of long-term workers. The last batch of people came at the right time. Li Ju was in a hurry to hire people. He was as fierce as a tiger. He settled them today and sent them all to the barren mountain to farm tomorrow. After completing all the matters of the chicken feather house and taking the last salary, Wang Dechen was happy and prepared to go back to the dental clinic. Li Ju looked at the self-made account book and population book handed in by Wang Dechen. He saw that the entries were clear and the data were clear. He was very satisfied. Thinking that he still needed an accountant, he hurriedly called him and asked the kitchen to prepare a table of wine and food and kept Wang Dechen to eat. When they were drunk, Li Ju tentatively asked Wang Dechen if he was willing to sign a contract to be his accountant. Throughout the ages, the accountant, finance, must be the most critical person. In ancient times, he even had to live and die with the master, unlike other jobs that could be done by anyone. Wang Dechen thought that this was a business for the rest of his life, so he hesitated. Li Ju advised him, the contract for the accountant should be signed until you are old. Even if someone else takes over the account book in the middle, you no longer care about the account, and you still have to live in the Li family. One nod means a lifetime. When you get married, have children, grow old, get sick, and die in the future, of course, I will pay for it. If you nod, I will immediately buy a cemetery for you and your future wife when you are old. The master's family bought a cemetery, which meant that they were willing to take care of him until he died. Wang Dechen had been working with Li Ju for 2 months, and he had a good understanding of Li Ju's nature, probably second only to his mother, who was with him day and night. His hesitation was because he was afraid that he would be out of the Yaxingjian Li garden. After working as an accountant for several years, Li Ju had his own confidants and kicked him out. By then he would be too old to do physical work, and he might still have a wife and children. If he was kicked out, the whole family would be left with nothing. Li Ju promised to take care of him until he died and was buried. Wang Dechen believed it, based on his understanding of Li Ju, and immediately raised his glass and said, Master, from now on, Dechen's life will belong to you. What do I need your life for? Li Ju clinked his glasses with his, and then naturally began to arrange work. You will go to the brokerage firm to settle the matter first, and then come back to sign the deed. Then take your clothes, shoes, and bedding to choose a house, settle down today, and go to the main hall to work tomorrow morning. I will hand over the existing account books to you, and you should sort out the internal and external accounts as soon as possible. There are 3 major things going on outside, and there are 4 or 5 families dealing with each other, and they are all very busy. Wang Dechen was full of energy, and said with a smile, starting to look for work now? You know you want to use me like an animal. Why do I feel a little regretful? I'll regret not coming back just looking at the wages and meals. Eat your meals, finish early and come back early. You know how busy I am. How can I have time to chat with you? I want to see 2 clear account books tomorrow night." After dealing with the accountant, I felt relieved. It was already after the rain, and the spring plowing in Lee Garden and the Barren Mountain were about to begin. Wu Dalang, Wang Dechen and others could only focus on the spring plowing. Every day, they arranged the shifts of farmhands and livestock, counted the purchase and expenditure of various materials, and then there were various accidents, such as people and livestock getting sick and injured, conflicts with passers-by and farmers nearby, etc. Every day, they were busy on both sides, and could not spare time to manage the poor relief office and the road construction site. In the end, Li Ju chose RZHU. Since he had figured it out, and didn't need to keep it secret from him, he might as well let him know the details of the matter, and it would also show that he, Master Li, had nothing to hide. Then sent Chu Sanlang out to look at these things with RZHU, which can be regarded as training Chu Sanlang for growth. When Li Ju and RZHU mentioned this matter, they only said that this was a project involving dozens or even hundreds of people. In order to avoid some things being unclear in the future, it would be right to put the whole thing under the nose of the person sent by one county magistrate. RZHU agreed with it. From that day on, RZHU got up every morning to look at the spring plowing in Lee Garden, what kind of plow to use, how deep the ridges were plowed, how to deal with seeds and seed sprouts. He first recorded everything, then went out to the construction site to check the progress. Came back to eat at noon, and then looked at the progress of the plowing land, went to the construction site again in the afternoon, and came back to look at the plowing land again after work in the evening. Fortunately, Lee Garden and several poor relief offices were not too far away. RZHU ran back and forth, and he lost a lot of weight, but his spirits became better and better. The places involved in Lee Garden were full of hope. Even the poor relief officers, which were always lifeless, were rejuvenated with new vitality. RZHU didn't know how Li Ju did all this. All he could do was record everything truthfully. At first, the people in the poor relief were numb, as if they were clay sculptures or wooden carvings, watching this Master Li who came from nowhere toss and turn. Li Ju sent people to measure the size and ask about the boundaries of the land, but they always answered woodenly, as if they were puppets without any perception. They were all the poorest people. Some were old or sick, some were disabled or weak. Occasionally, some lazy people would stay there for a few days, and they would always choose to go out and steal and abduct, because they really couldn't stand the hard life. In the end, the remaining ones were still such a group of people who could not see any hope. The only place in the poor relief that took in women was the nursing home, which basically took in abandoned babies. When they were a little older, they would either marry or sell themselves to other places. Occasionally, old women were taken in by Fushentang, but they usually didn't live for a few years. Only the nursing home with little girls was still a little lively from time to time. Children's innocence can be maintained for a period of time, and they will still smile before they are crushed by life. The old maids and old men from the poor relief center got the news from the county government that a kind-hearted man wanted to renovate their houses and repair the roads, and would hire them to do these jobs at the price of outside workers. The old maids and old men were very happy. When they came back and told the people who took them in, they received very little response. The old man asked, "Aren't you happy? I heard that it's a good family, and they pay a lot of wages and provide meals." The people in the house were silent. Finally, a man who lost his property due to illness and became homeless on the street leaned on the haystack and asked with his dying breath, "Will pie fall from the sky?" This is what Mr. Liu said when he sent things before. Last year, the harvest was good, and County Magistrate Wang forced the local rich to donate more ice and quilts, and happily sent them over. As a result, when he opened the sack, he found that only one layer of rice was stale grain that was barely edible, and the bottom was rotten. The livestock of the small family would not eat this kind of trough residue. The same was true for the quilts. The cotton was almost worn out, and the lining was moldy and black, sour and smelly. The old man sat there with his head down, saying, "Anyway, we can finally fix the leak." The poor relief house was originally a house that had been in disrepair for a long time. Although they would try their best to repair it every year, it was too old. On rainy days, mud mixed with water slid down together, and the collapsed parts could not be blocked. In winter, the north wind with snowflakes went straight into the house, and it was freezing cold. Another person asked, "Uncle, the Master Lee you are talking about is the Master Lee who opened a chicken feather house in the south of the city to shelter the poor?" If it was him, I would believe it. How could the old man guarding the poor relief house know about the chicken feather house in the suburbs? He just said, "I don't know." Someone else sneered and said, "You are still dreaming about eating 3 full meals a day. I'm afraid you haven't woken up from the last dream. Tell me, there is such a good place, why are you still here?" The person who spoke was speechless. He originally went to the chicken feather house. He was a lame man. When he heard the manager of the chicken feather house say that, as long as he was willing to work and pay back, he could live there for free until the beginning of spring, he was somewhat tempted. But the manager asked him to sign a contract, but he didn't dare to sign it. He always felt that as a lame man, what kind of work could he get? It was just selling his life to the mine, and he didn't even know what the contract was. So he relied on the money he still had, and stayed there for only one night before leaving. Later, he went to the city, and couldn't find a job for a while. After spending the last few dollars, he had to live on the streets, and was finally taken in by the healthcare center. But when he heard how many people the chicken feather house sent to Lee Garden, and how everyone in Lee Garden had enough food and good houses, he regretted it. It was a pity that Lee Garden did not recruit workers in the city, so he couldn't go in, even if he wanted to. In the healthcare center, he often mentioned this matter, and wanted to find a few people, to build up his courage, to go to the door to ask for work. However, others always said that he was sick, and confused and talking in his sleep, and if there is such a good place, I'm afraid you won't want to spend your life to fill it, etc. He was a timid person to begin with, so he didn't dare to mention the matter of going to the door again. He just kept thinking about the good place, where he once had 3 meals a day, meat every day, living in a brick house, and the owner was kind, and didn't beat people. Chapter 54, Small Construction in Full Swing. People in the Poor Relief Center don't believe in miracles at all, let alone that there are any kind people in the world. On the first day when RZHU followed Lee Yuan's farmhand to measure data, what he saw was such a group of numb people who had no hope of surviving. This was the first time RZHU knew that compared to the poor farmers in the village who were hungry, struggling to survive, and had to sell their children, there were people who were more humble and miserable. He didn't understand why Lee Ju was so kind to this group of people. Isn't it a good thing to help renovate the house? And he also hired such a group of people who were obviously incapable of working as temporary workers. Not only that, before renovating the house, he had to measure the depth, length, and width and replan the house. Is it worth it for Master Lee to design and build a new house for such a group of people? He kept his doubts in his heart and looked at Lee Ju's approach with such doubts. Based on the data brought back by Azu, Lee Ju spent an evening making several schematic diagrams based on the appearance of the small collective dormitory in the book, separating the functional areas of the house, at least the living area and the toilet area, and making sure to regularly handle the waste so that at least the problems of dirt, odor, and rampant diseases can be improved. In addition to the drawings, the things brought on the first day of the official start of work also included daily necessities and copper coins. Lee Ju asked Wu Dalong to exchange the day's wages according to the number of people and prepare the day's food. As Hu, Chu Sanlang and several strong laborers from Lee Yuan started working with a large cart of supplies and several drawings. The first thing was not to demolish the old house and distribute the work, but to send breakfast to the people in the poor relief office according to the number of people counted. The rations that Lee Ju specifically gave to the poor relief office were solid food, of course not as fine as those in Lee Yuan. The staple food for the 3 meals was mostly mixed grain rice made of beans and millet, accompanied by fried pickles with a little fat residue in it, a bowl of kelp bone soup for lunch, and a sweet potato for dinner. The people in the poor relief had been starving and cold for years and had barely had a bite of proper food. Many of them had not seen clean meals for a year or two, so when the people in Lee Yuan parked the food cart at the door, they couldn't even believe their eyes. It was the lame man who had rejected the chicken feather house who first woke up. "Is this food for us?" RZHU stood with his hands behind his back, imitating the posture and tone of Magistrate Wang. "This is food for those who go to work today. This kind of food is given 3 times a day. Children get half a bowl, and adults get a full bowl. Our master means that those who don't work don't eat. You are all willing to work, right? If you don't work, you won't get this. The room was silent, and the 50 or 60 people didn't dare to breathe, for fear of disturbing their dreams. The people brought by Azu began to organize everyone to line up. Azu directly pointed to the lame man who was talking, and asked him to come forward to help distribute breakfast. He then said, "This meal was prepared by the servants of the master's family. You have to cook the next meal yourself. So, let's have a few people who can't do heavy work to cook, boil water, and fetch water. Who is willing?" "Me. I'm willing. I will. I have cooked before." This group of desperate people became lively in an instant. As long as there is hope to survive, who doesn't want to live? A breakfast awakened the fighting spirit of a group of people. Soon, everyone received the work according to Azu's grouping, and started working enthusiastically. The old house was pushed down, the earth bricks, tiles, and stones were removed to the side. The stones and wood were unloaded, the foundation was relaid with stones, the supporting pillars were erected, and thick cement was applied. There were few strong laborers, who were responsible for the heaviest work, and the wages were higher, and meat was also given for 3 meals. Those who could not do heavy work were responsible for mixing mud, pushing carts, passing bricks, plastering walls, etc. Everyone had work to do, and no one was lazy. The small bungalow built according to Li Ju's design was quickly erected. There was no news in the county town. The neighbors heard that several poor relief centers were renovating their houses, and they all came to watch the fun. At first they were full of sympathy. These poor people finally had a place to shelter from the wind and rain. Then they became jealous. When will there be another kind-hearted person in the city who can cook 3 full meals a day for these poor ghosts? Those few strong people who do heavy work can even eat meat. You know, ordinary people who have enough food and clothing can only cut a piece of meat and put it on display during festivals, and they will not eat it until it is really rotten. Then they became curious. What is the plaster they use to build the house? Why is it different from the common clay? At the same time, the dyeing and weaving Chenpan closed the shop and named it Liug Goods Store, and the road from the wharf and the carriage to the shop was also started. The workers here were all hired by the pawnbrokers, and they worked faster than the poorhouse. In addition, paving roads was not as troublesome as building houses. Building houses involved digging the foundation, building the frame, and then building the houses layer by layer, while roads could be built section by section. On the first day, they dug the drainage system, and on the second day, they laid the road bed and paved a small section of the road with cement. As a result, the superior performance of cement quickly spread among the people. People curiously looked at the cement road that was circled off and waiting to dry, or quietly stepped on the dried areas and then shared their experiences with each other. Have you heard about the cement sold by Liug Goods Company? Just add water, mix it with sand and gravel, spread it flat, cover it with straw and dry it in the sun. It will be hard and flat in a few days, just like a big stone slab. More than that, use it to build walls, firmly stick bricks and stones together, and the wall will be strong and solid. Paste another layer on the wall, and when it dries, it will be waterproof and windproof, and not easy to break. It's much better than an adobe house. No matter how solid the rammed earth is, it will be ruined if it gets soaked in water. What's the price of this cement? I need to renovate my house. It should be cheap. If it's as expensive as blue bricks, who would be willing to use it to renovate the house for Fushentang? So before the road was repaired, many people were already secretly asking about cement. Dyeing and weaving Chen roughly estimated that the main cost of cement was the price of lime and the cost of transporting it to the barren mountain, labor costs, and the cost of transporting it to the store. Spread out, it was about 8 coins per bag. Mr. Li only needed this cost, and all the extra profits would belong to it. And this was a good thing with small profits but quick turnover. Dyeing and weaving Chen then waved his hand and said, "Special cement, 12 coins per bag. No discount no matter how much you buy. The production is limited. Buy it as soon as possible." In this way, before Liug opened, more than a dozen orders for cement had been lined up. Liug Goods Store had a good start, and the spring plowing in Liyuan was in full swing. The open space in Liuan was roughly equivalent to the experimental field, which was divided into 5 plots, planted with local japonica rice, corn, potatoes, sweet potatoes, and peanuts as the control group and experimental group. Liuan had only 2 acres of land, and there was an ox available, so the 2 acres of land were all handed over to Wu Dalong to take care of personally. Although the demand for each crop was different, the total labor input was almost the same, so the measured yield comparison was stable. The hillside that was vacated on the north side was planted with fruit trees and economic varieties. Li Ju did not take out fruit trees that were more suitable for growing in the north, but only took peaches, grapes, bayberries, loquats and other common varieties in the south. God knows whether the improved varieties will degenerate in the future. If fruit trees that are not adapted to the southern soil and water are taken out, and their degradation is accelerated, it will be very worthless. He also has to find time to write a basic biology textbook so as to train a group of agronomists who can slow down the degradation of improved varieties as much as possible, and perhaps there will be new discoveries. Recently, Wang Dechen has entered the working state, and Li Ju is finally free, and can continue to work on his basic science textbook. This work lasted until February, the busiest time for farming. Everyone was so busy that they could fall asleep as soon as they returned to the dormitory. The barren mountain, the plum garden and the goods store changed every day, and finally looked a little prosperous. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55. I don't want money, I'll give it all to the master. In mid-February, the weather was getting warmer day by day, and everywhere was green and lush, with hundreds of flowers beginning to bloom. Swallows built many nests under the eaves of Lee Garden, chirping back and forth every day, and the birds were thriving. The people of Lee Garden were also thriving. The barren mountain could no longer be called a barren mountain. On the reclaimed hilltops, saplings and shrubs were planted, or ridges were plowed to prepare for the seedlings. In the nursery room, nutrient soil was prepared strictly according to Li Ju's requirements, and seedlings were cultivated after pretreatment. These seedlings cultivated with mixed nutrient soil were visibly stronger than other people's seedlings. As Hu recorded everything truthfully and reported to County Magistrate Wang regularly. When County Magistrate Wang was not so busy, he would take a sedan chair to take a look around. Seeing that the open space on Li Ju's barren mountain was well managed, he felt relieved. Even if the grain output does not meet expectations, Li Ju is willing to work hard on farming and treat the people well. He thinks that is enough to be praised as a local example for other landlords and wealthy businessmen to follow. There are 30 or 40 people working on Huangshan all year round, of which about 1/3 are women. They either burn cement by the river, work in the fields, or do portage. People with strong strength do heavy work, get more wages and eat better. People with weak strength are mostly responsible for running errands, washing clothes, cooking, and cleaning the house, and their treatment is worse than those who do heavy work. When arranging work, only strength is considered, regardless of gender, so those strong women can get as much money as men, and those weak men will not be unable to find work. The number of long-term workers in Huangshan and Liuan is fixed, but the number of personnel is not fixed. There are more than 80 people in the entire Liuan now. In addition to Li Ju, Wang Dechen, Yu Yaoniang, Sanjiu, Mengshai and Wang and others each have their own specialties and their own special work. There were also 2 blind people favored by Li Ju, who were settled in the corner of the yard. They were responsible for unpacking the packaging bags of soap and pencils taken out from the storage center. After unpacking, the soap and other items were handed over to the mute to carry away and sent to the second gate. Other long-term workers wrapped them with straw paper and packed them into boxes and sent them to the warehouse of the cargo company for external sales. Other people who did not have any special skills were arranged to work in rotation in Huangshan and Liuan. Generally speaking, they worked 10 days in Liuan and 20 days in Huangshan every month. Liuan maintained a scale of 30 people, and there were usually 10 or so women who took on the work of sweeping and cleaning. Some girls were smart and skillful, so they were willing to learn cooking and sewing from Sanjiu and others. Among them, there were people who were born to do this job. They could learn it almost perfectly in a few days, so they were kept by Sanjiu and Yaoniang. After completing the work in Liyuan, they could make their own decisions for the rest of the time, and do something they liked or something that could make money. As more and more women worked together to earn pocket money in their spare time, the outside world was eagerly chasing yuhua skirts and yushuhua dajin shirts. The supply could not meet the demand for a while. Sanjiu and Yaoniang discussed opening a small workshop to specialize in making yuhua skirts and dajin shirts with complex workmanship. Sanjiu, who was full of confidence in the future, boldly bought brocade, chiffon, stretch fabric, colorful satin, etc. on credit from the cloth shop of dyeing and weaving Chen, and began to make and sell yuhua skirts of various styles. In less than 3 days, Sanjiu paid off the money for the cloth and found the huge profits. The yuhua skirts in Qingshan County have become famous. Qingshan County has produced a yuhua skirt with brocade, colorful and ingenious design. With the swaying skirts of people who visited, with the word of mouth of people who pursued the trend, with the correspondence and the promotion of merchants, it soon became popular in nearby towns. Yuhua skirts are made of multiple colors, which means that ordinary people can also make a yuhua skirt by using cloth strips. Girls with limited funds could buy cloth together, each buying a color, and then share the cost to make skirts. They didn't have to spend much money, but they could keep up with the trend. Rich families, on the other hand, would wear silk and satin, with colorful gold threads that dazzled people's eyes. This kind of style that appealed to all ages, men and women, noble and humble, had a huge market. However, the production capacity of this era was very low, and there was a waste of labor and materials. Although most families chose to make their own clothes, and there were many skilled women who would make more and sell them, there was still a big gap. The yuhua skirts made by Sanjiu and Yaoniang became the style pursued by the rich. Due to the high cost of dyeing and finishing the cloth, the colors of the yuhua skirts made by most ordinary families were dull and plain, because that was the cloth they could buy. The brightly colored skirts they desired were expensive, and the more colors they used, the more expensive they were. For example, the 7-color brocade yuhua skirts made by Sanjiu and Yaoniang were worth as much as 50 or 60 taels of silver. 7 pieces of brocade plus lining and other ingredients. The cloth cost is about 400 taels, which can be made into 13 or 14 horse-faced skirts, and one skirt can earn 20 to 30 taels of silver. Skirts made of other fabrics can earn between 10 and 20 taels each. When Sanjiu counted the profits on the first day of the accounting, she was so scared that her eyes almost fell out. She thought that this skirt could only earn enough money for food, so Liju asked her to run it herself, and she did not object. Unexpectedly, because the market is so large and the feedback from the high-end market is so good, these skirts that are close to luxury goods are really sold at luxury prices. What if Li Ju regrets knowing the truth? After all, they still have to rely on Li Yuan to live. Even farmers who cultivate the land have to hand over 30 to 40% of the grain as rent. Landlords will not provide farmers with food, housing, fish and meat. Sanjiu thought for a long time and went to Li Ju anxiously, explaining all the situations to him one by one, and finally said, I originally thought it was just a job worth a few taels of silver, but I didn't expect it to be so lucrative. I dare not. This is the master's idea, and the cloth is also provided by the master. I'm embarrassed. Yaoniang is even more embarrassed. Li Ju didn't expect it to be such a market. It seems that the world has been peaceful for a long time, and people are really a little richer. He thought for a moment and said, well, you give me a share of the profits. I won't take it myself, but I will send it to the account office and put it on the labor cost, so that I can send a few people to protect you. This business is very profitable. In the future, I will make more money by making puffy skirts, phoenix tail skirts, and pearl skirts. It's hard to guarantee that you won't be targeted by others. It's a small matter if the business is taken away, but it's a big matter if your life is endangered. What do you think? Sanjiu didn't want to hear this. Master, I'm thinking. Master, are you really not going to take some of the profits? After all, my mother and I are your servants. This is the first time I heard that the master lets the servants do business by themselves. Li Ju frowned and stared at her deeply. Zhao Sanjiu, who had lived in Li Garden for more than a month, became more and more outstanding. Her tall stature could finally stand straight, and she looked very slender. And that fair face could almost be called radiant, with autumn eyes and cherry lips, passionate and charming. Being stared at like this by Li Ju, Sanjiu felt a little embarrassed and turned her head subconsciously, revealing a snow-white neck, as soft and beautiful as a swan. Who wouldn't like such a beauty? It was a test of his self-control. The contract you signed is not a contract of selling yourself, and you are not slaves. After you finish your duties every day, the rest of the time is yours to do whatever you like. In the future, when you get married and leave Li Garden, there will be others to protect you, and I don't want the profit. Am I asking for a lot of money? I just hope that each of you can be self-reliant. It would be best if you can help a few more people to be self-reliant. If everyone can support themselves and everyone can eat meat every day, the master's wish will be fulfilled. After saying this, Li Ju frowned again, walked to the window, opened it and shouted, "Stop. When did you learn to eavesdrop? Did the master teach you to be a thief?" A figure was stopped by Li Ju's shout, slowly turned around, and stepped into the door shyly. It was Yu Yaoniang. She came over just now, and stopped when she heard Sanjiu's voice. She listened outside the window for a long time, but she was caught by Li Ju. Her face turned red and white with shame. Li Ju stared at her again. "What are you talking about? Is it because you feel that you are a slave, that you don't want the money, and are willing to give the money to the master?" Chapter 56. A great reward will lead to skillful work. Yu Yaoniang came with Sanjiu. For some reason, she would get nervous every time Sanjiu and Li Ju talked alone. She shouldn't have been eavesdropping like a thief, but she couldn't help it. It was rare for Li Ju to say something to her, but Yu Yaoniang only felt embarrassed, not as disgusted as when she was scolded by her parents at home. Maybe it was because the master said to Sanjiu, "In the future, you will get married and leave Li Garden." Yu Yaoniang listened to Li Ju's nagging with one ear and laughed with the other. Li Ju asked her twice what she came for, and Yu Yaoniang stammered, "I just want to know what the master is going to do. I can earn money by myself, and in the future I can pay the master back for the 20 taels he bought from me, and I will feel relieved." Sanjiu had been eating and sleeping with Yu Yaoniang these days, and she knew Yu Yaoniang's background very well. Thinking that her own daughter was almost sold as a child bride by unscrupulous uncles and aunts, she couldn't help but feel a little bit of sympathy for Yu Yaoniang. So she said, "Yu Yaoniang meant well, master, don't be angry." Li Ju said, "How dare I be angry with you? Go ahead, since the business can be done, do it well. Don't make trouble by selling inferior products as good ones, or doing things perfunctorily. Losing money is a small matter, but losing reputation is a big matter." The two girls went back and talked for half a day, and finally agreed to call this small garment workshop Music Clothing Shop. They secretly wanted to include Li Ju, but were afraid that Li Ju would not be happy, so they split the word Li in the name. Li Ju just laughed it off when he found out about it. He thought he was protecting them. After all, there were only a few girls supporting an industry which would inevitably attract envy. At least he could protect them for a while by putting his name on it. 2 days later, the oil charcoal collected from other places was delivered. It was said that oil charcoal was only produced in Yunmeng Road, and there was not enough time for merchants to come and go. The oil charcoal delivered to Li Garden that day was transferred from other merchants. For such a truckload of oil charcoal, Dyeing and Weaving Chin also promised that the merchants would give him priority in delivering goods. Meng Xianwang probably had a shadow from burning cement, and he was able to form the pencil lead twice, and he successfully burned 2 colors, dark black and light black. Li Ju asked someone to harness horses, drag a cartload of money, and swaggered up the barren mountain to give Meng Xianwang a bonus. Money can move people's hearts, and seeing money with your own eyes is even more shocking. A cart of money is actually only worth a few hundred taels of silver. It may surprise people to say it out, but it will not cause any lasting response. However, if it is changed into copper coins, strung together loosely, and piled up in a cart, even bending the cartboard, and leaving deep ruts on the road, the impact of this picture can last for a long time. In this way, more craftsmen will come to him, and more people will focus on inventions. As Li Ju expected, the whole Qingshan County talked about it for a long time, and even Meng Xianwang himself was stunned. He looked at the money and slapped his face with excitement, to confirm that everything in front of him was true. Because of the success of firing cement and pen refills, he really got a whole cart of money. When he was in the porcelain kiln before, improving the formula and studying kiln changes were his natural duties. If he failed to achieve success, he would be beaten and scolded. He was even driven out by the owner of the porcelain kiln because he was sick, and his half-new and half-old bedding was taken away by the owner and given to others. In the end, nothing was left for him except his underwear. Meng Xianwang, who was desperate, knocked on the door of the chicken feather room, and also knocked on a new life. In Li Ju's eyes, he was a real living person. The material and spiritual respect that Li Ju gave him had never been seen before, and probably would not be seen in the future. Therefore, Meng Xianwang put 12 points of energy into the third and fourth tasks that Li Ju gave him, not only for the bonus, but also to repay the charity of a master. Under the stimulation of the bonus, other people who did not master the technology also began to learn to explore new technologies and new formulas. The third task given by Li Ju was ink, and the fourth task was paper. The price of paper is not expensive now, but Li Ju feels that it is not cheap enough, and it is not suitable for pencil writing. The new task issued by Li Ju is paper with different softness, but extremely low cost. As long as the final product that Li Ju is satisfied with is produced, it will be considered full marks. Ink is the ink used in movable type printing. Movable type printing has been invented a long time ago, but for various reasons, it has not been widely circulated. The only difference was that the cost was too high and the effect was not good. Li Ju directly selected wooden movable type and pottery movable type as specimens. Compared with the price of copper and tin, wood and pottery are more suitable materials now. And the ink that Li Ju needed was the ink suitable for wooden, pottery and copper movable type. At least Li Ju had the formula and firing conditions for cement and pen refills, but the ink and paper were completely blindly explored. But Meng Xianwang and others were full of energy. The fired pen refills were assembled into pencils on the spot in the barren mountain, and then packed into bundles and sent to the goods store. LIUG goods store has not yet opened, but the orders are already full. The bookstores and schools in Qingshan City have received a lot of pencils, and the orders for cement have even been arranged for March's production. Soap is still sold in the hands of dyeing and weaving Chen, and the cheaper soap is sent to the government-run institutions such as the Poor Relief Office and the Yamen. Through the publicity and sharing of the inconspicuous little people there, it has become a must-have daily necessity for every household in a few days. People asked each other where they could buy it. After obtaining Li Ju's consent, Dyeing and Weaving Chen temporarily arranged to sell soap in the cloth shop, and then moved to another place after the goods store was completely completed. This is only the market in Qingshan County. The merchants from Qiantang, Suzhou, Jinling, and Gusu are still on their way. It can be imagined that when orders from other places come in, even if Li Ju opens 10 more kilns, he will not be able to satisfy their appetite. Therefore, Dyeing and Weaving Chen was very surprised to learn that Li Ju did not think about expanding production, but was thinking about paper and ink. This day, he calculated the orders that had been scheduled and the estimated orders from outside and combined them with the current production in the barren mountain. He rushed to Li Garden and stayed on Li Ju's Luohan bed and refused to leave. Since the formal living room for entertaining guests was built, Li Ju's small living room has not welcomed guests for a long time, so Li Ju secretly got out a Simmons mattress and put it on it to enjoy the spring feeling that he had not had for a long time. Dyeing and Weaving Chen yelled, "I won't leave until you hand over the cement and soap I want. I haven't even given you enough of my goods, and you let Leo Meng go and do all the unnecessary things." After entering the room, he sat down and immediately lay flat on the Luohan bed, saying, "Give me another cushion like this. Oh my god, it's so comfortable." Li Ju was writing the technical points of honeycomb: springs under the sun. Hearing this, he said, "Are you talking about ink and paper? What else? If movable type printing worked well, how could it not be passed down? As for white paper, even if you make it cheaper, can it be cheaper than straw paper?" Li Ju smiled and said, "Kingshan County is only the size of a palm. Even if everyone stops farming and comes to work, how many cities can they feed with the cement and soap they need? Sooner or later, the recipes of cement and soap will be passed on to others. We can make money together and avoid being an eyesore." Dyeing and weaving Chen said, "Well, our things are the same as other people's. What do merchants from outside come to Kingshan County for? So I have to have something new to attract them. Movable type printing is to pave the way for this new thing. It is just a means, not an end. Of course, with this, it will be much easier to do other things in the future." Dyeing and weaving Chen straightened up and said, "What new ideas do you have?" Li Ju said, "Is our county very famous in the Jiangnan area because of the Yuhua skirt?" "Of course, outsiders call it Kingshan Hangji. It's very famous. People from outside come to us to buy cement, and they also ask for 2 Yuhua skirts from Kingshan's colorful flower skirts. That's it. I wanted to bring some fame to our Kingshan city, so I had to let a beautiful woman like Sanjiu wear it to show off. Or I needed someone like Mr. Yu to spread the word. It's troublesome and depends on luck. I'm willing to use other methods to make us famous. Let's call it publicizing. There are many ways to publicize, but I'm afraid that when my business grows bigger in the future, I will become a businessman who can be manipulated by others. Therefore, I have to have a reputation as a clean stream." After thinking about it, I came up with this trick. Chapter 57. The Romance of the Three Kingdoms is here. Li Ju thought of the advertising method, which is using literature to carry advertisements. During this period, Li Ju had already compiled basic textbooks, a large book on literature, a small book on mathematics, and a small book on basic scientific knowledge. He only had to wait for the busy farming season to pass and the production part to be transferred, and then he could start classes. Since Wang Dechen took over the account books, his own industry has flourished and is on the right track, and Li Ju has had some free time. He asked Asu to take the two brothers Chuzan and Shiba to the bookstore in Kingshan County to buy all kinds of books. He read them day and night and roughly figured out the stages of literary development. It was roughly equivalent to the turn of the Yuan and Ming dynasties on the earth plane. Zaju had already risen, and there were quite a few good books. Li Ju focused on history and Zaju, and compared them with the earth plane while reading, and found many similarities. For example, this plane also saw the era of the Three Kingdoms, when there were also a large number of heroes, some of whom were the same as those on Earth, and many popular stories were passed down, and these stories were also quite similar to those on Earth, such as borrowing arrows with straw boats, burning chibi, and crossing the river in white clothes. However, the masterpiece Romance of the Three Kingdoms had not yet been published. Li Ju wrote Romance of the Three Kingdoms in the first column of the plan, and copied the poem Lin Jiangxin written by Yang Shen to Kinhan next to it. The rolling Yangtze River flows eastward, and the waves wash away all heroes. Right and wrong, success and failure are in vain. The green mountains are still there, and the sunset is red several times. The white-haired fisherman and woodcutter on the riverbank are used to watching the autumn moon and spring breeze. A pot of muddy wine is a happy reunion, and so many things in ancient and modern times are all left in jokes. Li Ju plans to publish Romance of the Three Kingdoms in a serialized form, so that everyone can have enough time to familiarize themselves with and copy the plot, and it can also give him enough time to modify the inappropriate content. Well, let the great inventor Huang Yuanyang invent Kingshan pen, pencil, and Kingshan mud, cement. Let Dio-chan wear Kingshan Hangji moonlight skirt phoenix tail skirt to dance. Let Dakayo and Zio-kayo wash their faces with Kingshan soap, fragrant soap, and dress up with Kingshan rouge. A Makeup line that will be launched in the future. With the power of Romance of the Three Kingdoms sweeping across the world for hundreds of years, it shouldn't be a big problem to bring the specialties of Kingshan County. After revising Romance of the Three Kingdoms, The Injustice of Dai, the story of the West Chamber and the Peony Pavilion will be copied. When the time comes, all the new products will be implanted. Kingshan County must be made into the illusion center of Jiangnan. In this way, even if the literati and poets don't come, they have to use the illusions of Kingshan County. Pomegranate skirts and saffron skirts often appear in the handed down works, and now it's the turn of the moonlight skirt. This is also the reason why Li Ju asked Meng Xianwang to preside over the improvement of paper and ink. He needs to reduce the cost of books so that his story can be spread further. At the same time, after the busy farming season is over, Li Ju will immediately put reading, literacy and literacy on the agenda. Before this year, the literacy rate of the grassroots people in Qingshan County will have a leap, and more people will be able to understand and retell Li Ju's story. Literacy rate and communication cost directly determine the efficiency of communication. Considering that honeycomb coal is a project in late autumn and early winter this year, there is a long period of time in the middle that Li Ju does not plan to come up with new things to dilute the influence of existing products. It is more appropriate to use these few months to solve the literacy rate and communication costs. Dyeing and weaving Chen also has a certain appreciation. After reading the setting words, he clapped his hands and shouted, "Good." Li Ju said, "It's a pity that it was not written by me, but a famous work of a great talent." After that, Li Ju left another sentence, speaking of the general trend of the world, long-term division will inevitably unite, and long-term unity will inevitably divide. Ran Chen said, "This sentence is true, but what are these several squiggly symbols in the middle?" "It is punctuation, Dao." Li Ju said, "I plan to have someone print this story on paper and spread it outside. I want to ask storytellers and people who can read to read it out. I think storytellers can make it clearer after adding punctuation. You see, a stroke is a pause in the middle, and a small circle is the end of a sentence." After Li Ju finished speaking, he compared it with the history of this plane, and adapted 2 more paragraphs. For example, there is no Qin dynasty in this plane, so the 7 kingdoms at the end of the week were in dispute, and merged into Qin needs to be changed to other expressions. There were already punctuation in ancient times, but there was a lack of a systematic agreed symbol. Li Ju only took out 3 types, comma, period, and colon, and did not involve quotations and interjections, so it is easy to understand. After reading a paragraph, Dyeing and weaving Chen understood the meaning of these symbols, and was more convinced of Li Ju. "Sir, you are a god." Li Ju said, "I don't deserve it, it is the wisdom of our ancestors." The first chapter is a story of the 3 brothers' sworn brotherhood in Peach Garden. It would be better if it could be accompanied by pictures, at least more people would be willing to read it, and it would be more convenient to insert advertisements. "Brother Chen, please help me find someone who can draw." The painter does not need to be too good, nor does he need to be a famous person, as long as he can draw the characters well. Li Ju quickly drew a line drawing of the 3 brothers' sworn brotherhood. Although there were only lines, the images, backgrounds, and temperaments of Liu, Guan, and Zhang were vividly displayed on the paper, and the mountains, rocks, and plants were vivid. He handed the sketch to Ran Chen and said, "Just do it like this, have someone copy it, and choose a good one to settle on. When the ink and paper are ready, carve it into a wood block, and take it to print. We can print hundreds of copies at a time, isn't it fun? Leave it to me." Ran Chen agreed readily, put away the drawing paper, and urged him to continue writing. "These 2 paragraphs are very good. The 10 eunuchs are a disaster to the country and the people." Then what? Li Ju could remember the plot, but he couldn't remember so much original text. How could he continue? He immediately smiled, and said that he would look through the books handed down by his ancestors and copy them out. Ran Chen repeatedly reminded him to send the manuscript to him as soon as it was copied, and not to forget to get him a mattress. He also took a bottle of good wine with him, and then he went back to work with satisfaction. Chapter 58. Who are you? Li Ju copied 2 chapters of a book at home, and after checking carefully to make sure there were no mistakes made by the blind historians of this world, he put down his pen and took a break. Suddenly, he saw a familiar little girl shaking her head outside the open door, saying, "Little Lotus, what are you doing outside? Why don't you come in?" "Master Uncle." Little Lotus answered crisply, and walked in looking around. Little Lotus was in the period of growth, absorbing nutrients like a willow tree in spring, so she was still skinny. She inherited her mother Sanjiu's spirituality, but not her mother's beautiful appearance. Her appearance could only be described as clean, which was not a bad thing. Her shaved scalp gave rise to a head of fluffy short hair, which was tied up in a small bun with a big bow on it. The drooping shadow of the bow covered the short yellow hair well. Li Ju picked an apple from the fruit plate on the table, exchanged it for an Aksu rock sugar heart from the storage center, handed this super big and sweet fruit to Xiaolian, and said, "Why are you eavesdropping outside?" Xiaolian held the apple and shook her head. "I didn't eavesdrop. Yes, my mother didn't let me disturb the master, but what? What happened?" Li Ju really treated this smart little girl as his own daughter and loved her. Seeing Xiaolian frowning and shaking her head, he put down the work at hand, carried the little girl to sit opposite the Kang table on the Luohan bed, and prepared to have a heart-to-heart talk with the little girl. In the holy garden, Yaoniang, Xiaolian and the mute are the most special. Yaoniang is the first one to follow Li Ju, so her status is different, and Li Ju also happens to admire her courage to change his fate for himself. Needless to say, the mute is the only one who knows Li Ju's biggest secret. Xiaolian is young, sensible, cute, and smart. Li Ju has grown up so much, and in the more than 20 years before and after the time travel, he has only held Xiaolian, a member of the opposite sex, except for his biological mother, Ms. Liu. Xiaolian asked innocently, "Is the master going to get married?" Li Ju laughed. "No, who told you that?" Xiaolian pouted and said, "Sister Chunyang said that. Just now, my mother and my aunt were making a skirt, and Sister Chunyang saw it. Sister Chunyang said she liked it, and took it away. My mother said that the skirt had been decided by Mrs. Chen, and Sister Chunyang said, 'What, Mrs. Chen and Mrs. Li? No one can surpass me. Wait for me to marry in sooner or later, and you will be in trouble.' I think what Sister Chunyang said is wrong, but my mother didn't say anything, and I dare not say anything." Xiaolian imitated Yu Chunyang's tone and demeanor vividly, as if Yu Chunyang herself was recreating the scene. But Li Ju knew, as soon as he heard it, that this girl didn't tell the truth, or at least didn't tell the whole truth. She was so cunning at such a young age. No wonder the mother and daughter were able to escape, even though they were about to be sold. "Tell the truth to your uncle. Don't you just want your uncle to go and see what happened?" Xiaolian pouted again. "Uncle, grandpa, Sister Chunyang, really, I don't like her anyway. But my aunt Yaoniang was afraid that you would be unhappy, so they didn't dare to tell you. They quarreled a little fiercely today, so I ran over quietly." After that, the little girl looked at Li Ju eagerly. "Uncle, grandpa, do you want to go and see?" Li Ju jumped down from the bed and lifted Xiaolian down with her. He grabbed the Huan brocade double-breasted shirt at the door and put it on. He carried the little girl on his shoulders and sat her down, smiling. "Since you are here, of course I have to go and see. Otherwise how can I be embarrassed to be your uncle? Why do you call Yaoniang aunt, but call aunt's sister?" Xiaolian hugged Li Ju's head and said coquettishly, "She doesn't act like an elder. I want to call her sister, but my mother won't let me. You are a little smart. It would be great if you could be so smart all your life." Li Ju poked the little girl's forehead. "Sit tight, let's go." Yaoniang Ant and Jiu usually do their work outside in the back house next to the hanging flower gate. The back house always has 7 or 8 connected rooms, facing south and north, and is on the outermost layer. It is a bit noisy, and no one has moved in yet. Li Ju left the room empty, always keeping a tea stove and water ready to entertain guests when he is not there. If they are on good terms, such as Xiaoli, Huang Zhi, Dying and Weaving Chen, they will naturally be welcome to the living room to wait. If they are not on close terms, they can rest here and drink tea. Li Ju did not want to classify the guests, but was persuaded by AZHU. No matter what Li Ju thought in his heart, this is a reality. If County Magistrate Wang came and was invited to the back house for tea, and the family members of the farmhands were there to send food and ask for money, it would be embarrassing for County Magistrate Wang. RZHU said, "This is all for the master's wish. We just need to know that the master treats us the same way." Indeed, taking too big a step can easily cause trouble. Li Ju agreed. The distinguished guests were received in the living room, and the ordinary guests waited in the tea room. However, since the back room was turned into a tea room, it has not been used to entertain guests properly. Most of the time, it is used by farmhands and female relatives. Since the Lantern Festival, Sanjiu and Yaoniang's clothing store has been prosperous. They often need to trade with the outside world, or transport cloth in, or send goods out, or receive guests. If the business is placed in Lee Garden, it will not only look ugly, but also be inconvenient. They are embarrassed to do private work in front of Li Ju, so they simply avoid it, and go to the back room. In this way, it is convenient to communicate with the outside world, and they can also inform Li Ju of the exchanges, saving Shivalang from running around. And it is also convenient to calculate the rent for Li Ju. They plan to pay Li Ju the rent of the shop on Guangan Street. Since Li Ju encouraged them to do a business seriously, they should not take advantage of them. Li Ju didn't share the cost of Li Yuan's 3 meals a day and the rent for the dormitory, but he had to include the rent for the shop. In addition to Sanjiu and the others, there were also the older girls and young wives who joined later, and they spent their free time making clothes in the back room. Before he even entered the house, in the white field outside where vegetables had just been planted, Li Ju heard Chaniang's sharp voice. "Bitch, what kind of work don't you do in my house? You've been living and eating for free for more than 10 years. Now I just ask you to wash a skirt, but you refuse to do it, pretending to be a lady. Brotherly is kind-hearted, and took you in for food, but you used other people's house to collect private money, and you refused to hand it over when I found out. Does Brotherly know that he bought an ungrateful person? You don't do your job, but you're betraying others first. Today, I'm going to teach you a lesson on behalf of Brotherly." Li Ju was quite surprised. "Who are you? This sister who doesn't consider herself an outsider in her words and deeds. Do I know you?" Chapter 59 A joke. Since Chaniang was brought back by Li Ju on the Lantern Festival, she has been making trouble non-stop. In the first few days, she was afraid that Huang Yuba would come to her house, so she stayed in her room for a few days. Later, Huang Yuba was arrested by the government for beating his wife to death and sentenced to hanging. Chaniang started to act like a spoiled child again. Chaniang was used to judging people by their appearance. People came and went in Lee Garden, and she knew who she could and could not offend by just looking up and down. She flattered Wang Dechen, Wu Dalang, the mute and others, and even if they were serious and retreated, Chaniang did not care. When she met Sanjiu, Yaoniang and others, Chaniang immediately rolled her eyes. Sanjiu, because of avoiding suspicion, would not go to Li Ju unless it was necessary or summoned by Li Ju. Chaniang saw that Li Ju and Sanjiu had no private relationship, and Sanjiu probably could not file a complaint. In Chaniang's shallow mind, if two adult men and women who are not related by blood have no private feelings, they should not have private relationships, and naturally there should be no mutual help or friendship. In this case, there is no need to worry about Sanjiu, and because Sanjiu is very beautiful, Chaniang will exclude her even more. As for Yaoniang, let alone, in the past 10 years of Chaniang's life, Yaoniang was her maid, even like a pig or dog, and she would beat her with a stick for fun when she was bored. Chaniang did it accurately and beautifully, so that after doing it for almost a month, Yaoniang could no longer bear it and exploded. The cause of this incident was not that Yaoniang was bullied, but that Chaniang took the Yuhua skirt that someone else had ordered without asking, and wore it outside to show off. It happened to be seen by the customer who ordered the skirt, Chen, the wife of the local rich businessman Mr. Wang. Fortunately, Mrs. Chen was a neighbor of Li Yuan, and knew that Li Ju was not short of money, let alone good-looking clothes, and would never do such a thing as to be greedy, and wear the customer's clothes as her own clothes. The customer told Sanjiu privately. When Sanjiu checked the clothes, he found that Chaniang often stole new clothes from the shop to show off outside. Not only that, several new spring clothes made by Yaoniang were also forcibly taken away by Chaniang and worn by herself. When she asked Yaoniang about this matter again, Yaoniang looked tired. "If I don't give it to her, she will definitely make a fuss. The master has a lot of things to do, why bother him for this? It's useless to let the master think that I can't bear to give up a few clothes, but it makes everyone uneasy." Sanjiu was really a little angry at Yaoniang for not fighting. But then again, if Chaniang's behavior only involved Yaoniang's private property, it would be fine. But now it has affected the reputation of the shop, which cannot be ignored. Sanjiu made up her mind that if Yaoniang allowed her sister to be so unreasonable, she would immediately split the property with Yaoniang. Although she has only been in business for a month, she now understands what reputation and word of mouth are. Although her shop is still small, she must not let her reputation be ruined just when it is starting to get better. What made Sanjiu happy was that Yaoniang, who had let her clothes do whatever they wanted, was furious when she heard that Chunyang dared to steal the custom-made skirts in the shop. She was even angrier than Sanjiu. It happened that Chunyang had just woken up at this time and was also furious when she saw her clothes hanging there wrinkled. She asked Yaoniang to iron her clothes before going to bed last night. She had to go out and talk to her old friends. How could she show off if she didn't wear them neatly? Chunyang rushed to the back room holding her skirt and scolded her. Sanjiu and Yaoniang were talking about the impact on the shop, how to compensate the customers, and how to ask the master to help solve the problem without making him feel that they had made trouble before making any money. Yaoniang was already angry, and Chunyang was still talking nonsense. Yaoniang exploded on the spot. I'm the master's servant, not yours. What right do you have to order me around? What master are you pretending to be? I just saw that you had a hard time getting married and had no home, so I tolerated you a little, but you got complacent and became even more aggressive. So let's settle accounts. We are the Lee family, how much work we do, and how much food we eat. Your elder sister came and spent our master's money to buy you. We are all slaves who sell our bodies, so who is more valuable than who? Everyone is busy working, but you don't pick up a needle, don't wash a bowl, don't even help when the oil bottle is overturned. When the kitchen calls for dinner, you are the first one to run. You pick the bones in the soup and the meat and the vegetables into your own bowl. Even I'm ashamed of your behavior. I wish I could go back to the master and kick you out immediately. You still have the nerve to say this. Your clothes are behind your door. Wash them yourself. These clothes were originally mine, and I won't give them to you. You wear my clothes as if they are your own, without even considering whether you are worthy of them. Yaoniang didn't know how long she had been holding it in. After she finished her long string of words without pausing, she tried to strip Chunyang of her bright red printed jacket. Chunyang refused to give it to her, and she was angry and annoyed because she had never been treated so badly by anyone. The person who was treating her badly was Yaoniang, who had been bullied since she was a child. So she started fighting with Yaoniang. Sanjiu was stunned. She didn't expect Yaoniang to say such a thing. By the time she came to her senses, Yaoniang and her sister had already started fighting. Sanjiu couldn't stop her and couldn't persuade her, so she called other wives to help. Usually, everyone disliked Chunyang. Li Ju was humble and gentle, but a girl picked up on the street acted bossy. But they didn't bother with her for Yaoniang's sake. Now Yaoniang was fighting with her. What else could she wait for if she didn't take the opportunity to add insult to injury? So she tried to persuade them to fight on the surface, but actually took sides. They fought for a long time before they separated. Yaoniang took advantage of the situation and fell into Sanjiu's arms. Why am I so miserable? She is not my legitimate relative. Even if she is, I was sold to the master as a maid for 20 taels of silver. No one should be able to order me around without the master's permission. Chunyang was in a state of embarrassment. She felt that she was being laughed at by a group of people again. She also started to curse and swear, making a big fuss. In this way, the quarrel in the back room continued until Li Ju was moved by Xiaolina to seek justice. Chapter 60 Li Yuan Family Rules. Li Ju walked into the back room and glanced around. The room suddenly fell silent. The girls who were fighting just now stood apart hurriedly and greeted Li Ju. Hello, master. Sanjiu carefully blocked Yaoniang behind him. After Li Ju sat down, he poured tea for Li Ju and said, why is the master here? If he doesn't come, I'm afraid the roof will be blown off. Li Ju put Xiaolian down, took the tea, opened the lid, and put it on the table. What's going on? Sanjiu then told him everything that happened before in a fair and impartial manner, and finally said, it's really our fault that the master knows about it. But this matter, I feel that it's not Yaoniang's fault. Li Ju said, why is it not Yaoniang's fault? You don't have to cover up for others. We will settle your mistakes later. Yaoniang couldn't help crying after hearing these 2 or 3 sentences, and Chunniang covered her cheeks and laughed. But Li Ju's next sentence made Chunniang stop laughing. Li Ju said, even if they are family members, 2 days of visiting is enough. Why did you let your sister live in the garden for a month? She doesn't work for us, and she hasn't signed a contract. Isn't she here for free? Other people also have families. Even if they come to our house, they just say hello and bring some food and daily necessities before going home. How would others feel about you letting your family members eat and live for free? You know it's your fault. Yaoniang stopped crying immediately. I know I was wrong. Master, I won't dare to do it again. I was afraid that you would think I didn't appreciate our friendship. I won't do that in the future. You have to send your sister away before this time tomorrow. If you need anyone to help, go find them yourself. Find Chusan. Li Ju didn't even look at Chunniang and went straight to Sanjiu. A stranger has come into the garden, and she's a female family member. It has affected your work. Why didn't you tell me? You even helped her hide it. I remember that you and Yaoniang take turns on duty, right? Sanjiu took a step back and bowed long to Li Ju. Li Ju didn't like people kneeling in front of him. Bowing and crossing hands were almost the limit, so Sanjiu only bowed as a sign of acknowledgement. Li Ju said, since you are both first-time offenders and I didn't tell you about these rules in advance, I won't punish you this time. I will write out the house rules of Li Garden tomorrow. Each of you should copy the house rules 50 times. If something like this happens again in the future, I will deal with it according to the house rules. Chunniang had already angered everyone by stealing the custom-made skirt from the clothing store, and now she had offended Li Ju. Everyone heard that Li Ju and Yaoniang didn't regard this person as a relative or friend, so when Li Ju finished his outburst and left, everyone rushed up and carried Chunniang to the intersection outside the door and threw her out. The next day, Li Ju took a 10-article house rule and ordered Yaoniang and Sanjiu to copy it 50 times each, including the phonetic notation. The total number was about 600 or 700 words, and the 2 girls who had just learned to read were copying so much that their hands were almost broken. Li Ju asked them to keep 1 copy each and give 1 copy to the rest. He ordered those who could read to lead the others to read. By accident, this family rule became the first literacy textbook for everyone in Li Yuan. This family rule was actually a version that Li Ju modified based on the code of conduct for primary and secondary school students on Earth. It sounds simple, but if you can really do it, you can be considered a hardworking, polite, and sensible person. As the long-term workers in the 3 places of the Li family in the barren mountains and construction sites read it repeatedly, this family rule was gradually familiar to others. Compared with the family rules and family precepts of other families, the Li Yuan family precepts highlight vernacular, which is really spoken language, that even street children can recite it at will. In addition, it seems incompatible with this world. The family precepts of other wealthy families are mostly about persuading, learning, good deeds, courtesy, righteousness, and shame, and managing servants will clearly indicate rewards and punishments. Li Yuan's family rules are not like these 2. If it is a family precept, it seems too shallow and too controlling. Even the clothes should be clean, and not littering waste, etc. are clearly stipulated. If it is a family rule, it seems too indulgent. The whole text does not mention how to punish servants who are lazy, so how to discipline lazy servants? In the words of Ranzi Chen, it doesn't seem to be managing slaves, but it seems to be managing sons. Think about it, Li Ju didn't actually sign a contract with any long-term worker. All the people in Li Yuan signed long-term worker contracts for several years, dozens of years, or even decades. It makes sense. Because the people in Li Yuan were afraid that they would not learn well and be disliked by Li Ju, they memorized the family precepts for 2 days and did it in a proper manner. Those who had contact with the people in Li Yuan could see that the people in Li Yuan were gradually different from them, but they couldn't say where they were different. If you have to describe it, it's all like well-behaved people, not those stupid roe deer in the countryside. They speak very nicely, and their talents are also very good looking. Yes, Li Ju required them to be polite, respect each other, and be civilized. If an uneducated person is neatly dressed and speaks in a civilized manner, he will be like a different person. For Huang Zhin County Magistrate Wang, the most important thing is not the connotation of this simple family motto. In their opinion, the content of this family rule itself is very suitable for admonishing ordinary people. Because ordinary people do not need everyone to take the top exam, do not need everyone to become an official, and do not need to be educated to become a saint. It is enough for them to be like a person, hardworking and willing to work, united and help each other, and not fight, as required by Li Yuan's family rules. What attracted County Magistrate Wang and Huang Zhin was the pinyin and the family rules. Although RZHU had mentioned to County Magistrate Wang in his daily summary that Li Ju invented a series of wonderful symbols for phonetic notation, and that as long as the pronunciation was remembered, all words could be spelled, but at that time County Magistrate Wang only thought it was the same as the Fanqi method, and did not take it to heart, until he got this family rule. County Magistrate Wang got the family rule from the musicians, who were collecting folk songs in the county. The musician was cautious, and noted and learned the original pinyin word for word. It took only half an hour for County Magistrate Wang to understand how to use a pinyin and symbols in the family rules from the musician, and he was very keenly aware of the importance of it, so he visited Mr. Huang overnight. County Magistrate Wang came to Mr. Huang's house, and was taken directly to the study. Mr. Huang was reading the pinyin in front of a magnified copy of the Li Yuan family rules hanging on the wall. He had a few pieces of paper in his hand. While reading the pinyin, he was also pinyining the words in his hand. There were a few pieces of paper with pinyin already annotated on the side, which were pressed on the table by a paperweight. It was very late, and Mr. Huang would not read at this late time. The lighting cost of this era was very high, and the candles that literati liked were still made of beeswax, which were expensive. Even if Mr. Huang had a rich family and thousands of acres of fertile land, he would not dare to use candles all the time. As for the relatively cheap oil lamps, the smoke is particularly heavy and the light source is not stable. The most important thing is that the oil lamp is not that cheap. It is still a lighting device that tests one's family's financial situation. Therefore, unless there is an urgent discovery, such as the Lantern Festival poetry collection sent by Li Ju last time, Huang Zhin loves it so much that he can't put it down, and then he will light a candle and read it at night. This night, Huang Zhin made an exception again. 2 beeswax candles were lit high in the study, one to illuminate the copied family rules on the wall, and the other to illuminate the documents. When County Magistrate Wang came in, Huang Zhin's face and eyes were red, as if they were printed with divine light. "Sir, this thing came from here. I'm afraid that our Qingshan County will have a saint." Chapter 61. Saint Li Ju? Saint? Who? Li Ju? Magistrate Wang thought of the importance of pinyin, but he didn't expect Mr. Huang to elevate it so high. Mr. Huang was a scholar and a teacher. Magistrate Wang was different. From the day he embarked on the road to the imperial examination, he adopted the quick test method. He was not as enthusiastic about learning as Mr. Huang. Magistrate Wang's ambition from beginning to end was to be a good official and keep the area safe. Mr. Huang was so excited that the corners of his mouth twitched uncontrollably. Just now I called a maid who had never learned to read, asked her to memorize the rhymes and initials of these pinyin, and then gave her the first chapter of the King Hui of Liang with my own pinyin annotations. The first time, I stumbled, but I managed to read it. The second and third times, I was familiar with it. By the fifth time, I could already recite some words and sentences. Then I gave her the third chapter of the King of Liang Hui without phonetic notation. This time, she could recognize the words Mencius, the King of Liang Hui, the King of the Kingdom, etc. It took only half an hour from the time I called her into the time she could recognize these words and recite some of the chapters. Brother Wang, can you understand the key here? County Magistrate Wang took a breath and said, pinyin can be used with very small characters in the middle, which is different from the correct characters, so it does not affect the reading of the text like the Fanqi method. If books with pinyin are printed, then as long as everyone learns the phonetics and rhymes, they can recite and learn to write books by themselves. If the annotations are also annotated with phonetic notation, then a student can completely learn the 4 books and 5 classics at home. Huang Churen said, not only that, have you thought of another thing? Since all characters can be annotated with phonetic notation, can't children learn Mandarin by comparing with Pinyin? At least it will be faster and more accurate. In addition, we can also compile books and arrange books in the order of phonetic notation, which is convenient for searching. Moreover, think about it, there is also the compilation of dictionaries, that is a dictionary. If we use the Pinyin method to compile, wouldn't it be simple? It is much simpler and clearer than our current radical method and stroke method. If the two are combined, in the future, if you can read, but not write the characters, you can use the Pinyin method to look up, and if you can, write but not read the characters, you can use the radical stroke method to look up what characters can't be found. Therefore, I would like to ask Brother Lee to have a chat with him, and discuss the use of Pinyin with him in detail. If a finished product can be produced and handed over to Brother Wang to submit to the officials, you and I will be famous in history. After hearing what Mr. Huang said, County Magistrate Wang immediately thought of the usage of Pinyin. And not just in books. Pinyin has a total of 26 symbols, and there are only more than 20 initials and finals respectively. It is easy and convenient to learn. When everyone in the school teaches it layer by layer, everyone will be able to learn it. By then, the road names, place names and even the names of various government offices will be annotated with Pinyin, which will make it convenient for people to enter the city and do things. Brother Huang is right. I haven't thought about this yet. Let's think it through tonight, and then invite Li Ju to discuss important matters tomorrow. The two old scholars talked all night long by candlelight, and did not rest until the cock crowed. The next morning, Magistrate Wang went back to his house to handle official business, and Mr. Huang sent an invitation to Li Ju, inviting him to his house for a chat. Li Ju had just copied a few chapters of Romance of the Three Kingdoms, and revised records of the state of Song of several thousand words, based on history of Song dynasty, and related biographies and literary works, and took the opportunity to send them to Mr. Huang's house. Mr. Huang loved reading, and had a broad mind. He liked all kinds of new articles the most. Li Ju dared to present the street novels and the history of Song dynasty that he had modified because of Mr. Huang's nature. Mr. Huang asked Li Ju to appreciate the peach blossoms, but he didn't expect Li Ju to bring such a surprise. He even forgot the original intention of inviting Li Ju, and just opened Song Guozhipu and the character book first. Li Ju wrote strictly according to the timeline, starting from the Qinqiu Mutiny and Zhao Kuangai self-proclaimed emperor, and copied the Song dynasty in a chronological format, and then listed the biographies of the characters involved, and attached their written works. Of course, Li Ju only copied the essence of the literati works involved. It is unlikely to copy out all the works of the characters involved. The voluminous volume is a problem. Another problem is that there are many situations that are inconsistent with the historical records of this world. It takes time to compare them bit by bit. Thousands of words count the biographies and major works, but it only writes to the first year of Jianlong, involving dozens of characters, including the main characters such as Che Rang. Li Ju only copied the collection of works for Li Yu and his ministers. Li Yu's poems are so good that he was praised as Shengxiu in later generations. Mr. Huang read the history roughly and read the text carefully. He couldn't move his eyes away when he turned to Li Yu. This Song Guozhi is really a treasure. Li Changguang, Li Yu, really existed, right? Why can he write about the grief of the king of the fallen country so vividly? And he can write about the scene of women's night party so beautifully. Mr. Huang couldn't help blushing when he saw the good articles and sentences. He hurriedly ordered someone to bring Xiangsu wine and said, only Xiangsu wine can match such good sentences. Do you still have Xiangsu wine at home, my dear brother? I will use this wine to accompany the good articles. It seems that you still have some good stuff hidden. If there are not 100 or 80 jars, it will not be enough. Li Ju asked Sanlang to write it down. First send a cart to Mr. Churen to drink. In the future, this item will be added to the gift list for festivals and birthdays. He also said to Mr. Huang, sir, don't worry about it. This wine is a family heirloom. I don't understand its taste and don't like to drink it. It's their good fortune to meet someone who appreciates it. If you feel uncomfortable with taking wine for free, I will publish my works in the future and ask you to write some comments. Mr. Huang put down the poetry collections of Li Yu and his sons and Feng Yanxi and went to read Romance of the Three Kingdoms. However, it was a familiar story and familiar characters, which combined to create a completely different reading experience. At that time, legends and dramas were still popular. Vernacular novels had not yet appeared, and Sananape were nowhere to be found. The Romance of the Three Kingdoms that Li Ju released was a style of writing that Mr. Huang had never come across, so much so that Mr. Huang didn't know how to evaluate it at first. To say it is good, it is written in plain language with slang, without fuchsing and parallelism, so what is good about it? To say it is not good, but it is obviously very good, and it writes the stories known to all women and children in a vivid and picturesque way. The Records of the Song Dynasty is a work of highbrow literature, and the attached literary works are all national treasures. However, the Romance of the Three Kingdoms is a popular novel, something for the common people, close to the vernacular level of the time. It is a compilation of the Three Kingdoms' interesting stories in folk legends for thousands of years, and finally formed a huge group story after artistic processing, editing and integration, and text adaptation. Looking at the level of text alone, the literary collections of those literati are the highest, followed by the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. As for the Records of the Song Dynasty, it is actually a historical novel, extremely simple and boring, and can be ranked at the bottom. Because these two works are similar in subject matter, but use completely different expressions, especially the main body and the attached text of the Records of the Song Dynasty present to extreme text arts. So Mr. Huang believed Li Ju's statement that these were originally ancestral books, and Li Ju just copied them out. As long as he is willing to believe this, it will be much easier to explain when Li Ju copies the West Chamber and Journey to the West and the future, and even takes out some Ming and Qing Dynasty block prints. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62. Sir, can you understand this situation? Huang Jiren, who had agreed to discuss Pinayan with Li Ju, discussed Romance of the Three Kingdoms and Li Yu with Li Ju for half a day, and tortured Li Ju, who only knew the basics, so much that he didn't know what day it was. It was only the belated arrival of County Magistrate Wang that pulled Huang Jiren out of the wonderful world of literature and back to the reality in front of him, the popularization and applicability of Pinayan. Li Ju had this plan, so all the textbooks he made had Pinayan. Li Yaoniang also learned Pinayan first and then literature, and drew Pinayan on the words he didn't know how to write. However, he didn't expect to be targeted by County Magistrate Wang so soon, and he didn't expect Huang Jiren to have grasped the use of Pinayan very accurately. Li Ju asked for a large white paper, put the 26 Latin letters and the dotted U on it, and then wrote the initials and finals below. As he wrote, he said, I started learning to read from Pinayan in elementary school, and so did my brothers, sisters, and teachers. Because children are very young, they learn slowly, so it took us a month to learn Pinayan. But when we grow up, we can learn it very quickly, usually in 1 or 2 days. After learning to read Pinayan, in the next few years, the books we used to study literature with the teacher were specially made, and each character was marked with Pinayan. In addition, we do have dictionaries based on Pinayan, radicals, and strokes, and the pronunciation of each Pinayan is marked with a pronunciation icon. The dictionaries are divided into elementary dictionaries that can be used by students and young children, advanced dictionaries for scholars and students, and complete dictionaries for old scholars and university scholars, so that everyone can use what they need. Li Ju paused when he wrote this. In fact, there are dictionaries specifically for farmers, herdsmen, craftsmen and even businessmen, which are used to standardize the words used by relevant personnel in an industry. In this way, we no longer have to worry about different accents and local names. Because I'm uneducated, many dictionaries have been lost, but I still remember the usage and compilation methods. If I can compile 1 or 2 and publish them all over the world, I think it will be a great event for my generation to become famous. Mr. Huang thought of the grand occasion of everyone having a copy of Huanggong dictionary in the future, and he couldn't help but feel excited. He wanted to start compiling it immediately and quickly take up this name. County Magistrate Wang sighed what a pity, and said, if the dictionaries you mentioned are all there, wouldn't they be published all over the world immediately? We don't have to spend this effort. Li Ju shook his head. No, there are many inappropriate writing methods. Instead of deleting and reducing, it's better to start from the beginning. County Magistrate Wang thought it was related to the previous dynasty or privacy, and his face showed understanding. In addition, I personally think that the dictionary used by students needs a dialect version. That is, the dialect pronunciation and Mandarin pronunciation of a word should be listed on it. Mr. Huang nodded. That's right. Our Qingshan County is a place with a flourishing literary style. Even so, there are only a few of us who can teach students Mandarin. If there is a dictionary that can teach them in detail, it will be more convenient. From this point of view, it can be extended to other places. As usual, as long as there is someone who is familiar with phonetic notation to write down the dialect pronunciation of each word, those who have learned Pinyin can naturally learn Mandarin on their own. County Magistrate Wang himself had also suffered the pain of learning Mandarin. When he was on duty at the Hanlin Academy, he had seen colleagues who were too embarrassed to speak because they could not speak Mandarin clearly. When he heard that Pinyin had such a usage, he thought carefully and realized that it was indeed true. He said, it is indeed true. Thinking about it carefully, the most urgent task is to annotate the simplest colloquialisms with Pinyin, and then annotate the Pinyin on them, and order the students in this county to learn and pass them on. At the same time, we need to trouble several old teachers to take the 4 books and 5 classics, and also annotate the Pinyin for future students to learn. When County Magistrate Wang said this, his heart moved, and he found an obstacle in this plan. However, copying books is time consuming. If the Pinyin is included, it will take twice as long to copy a book. If it is made into a wood block to print, it seems that many master plates will have to be carved. It is hopeless within this year. Li Ju smiled and said, that may not be the case. I read ancient books and saw that the ancients already had the method of movable type printing. If movable type is used for typesetting, then a lot of work will be saved. Printing a few thousand copies per plate is not a problem. The most urgent task is to make the engraving, ink, and printing paper. I have ordered skilled craftsmen to figure out this matter. I believe that with the generous reward, there will be gains. But Brother Huang's help is needed for making movable type. Mr. Huang understood. As soon as he heard it, I can save myself the trouble. I will write out each character separately according to the commonly used books. I will write more for the characters that are used more, and less for the characters that are used less. This will make it easier to arrange the text. By the way, we can also sort out the characters that we will use and prepare for compiling a dictionary. County Magistrate Wang said, if it really works, and we will be famous in the world in the future, Mr. Li and Mr. Huang will be the main contributors, and I will be satisfied if I can add a contribution at the end. Li Ju didn't care about this at all. After some refusals, Huang and Wang finally let him put Mr. Qingshan on the front page, and Mr. Huang would write a separate article to narrate this matter. In fact, Mr. Huang had already recorded many things about Li Ju and Li Yuan in his essays. Li Ju and his Li Yuan are really interesting. As Hu, Dang and Weaving Chen and others could find that Li Ju had ambitions, and Mr. Huang also found it. Because of his wide range of interests, Mr. Huang's vision and mind are much broader than ordinary people. Li Ju's preferential treatment of long-term workers has actually caused dissatisfaction among some wealthy families. Those tenants, long-term and short-term workers, etc., also have private exchanges. Li Yuan is an outsider, and he has also made good things such as soap and yuhua skirts. Every move is in the eyes of people. Such a family at the cusp of the storm will naturally attract a lot of criticism. Li Ju increased the treatment of long-term workers and tenants by at least 3 or 4 times, so that tenants and long-term workers from other families complained about it and inevitably slacked off in their work, and even secretly hoped that their masters would be like Li Ju and give more benefits. This year, because Li Ju only recruited more than 80 people, many of whom had families, and many of whom were old, weak, and disabled, and he had spread the word early that he would not buy people this year, he did not arouse fierce opposition from several other landlords and wealthy businessmen. However, their opposition could not make a big difference. Li Ju had already been recognized by local scholars, and was protected by the county magistrate and the county magistrate. His good friend Chen Ranzi had a wide range of friends, and he himself still had those in-demand goods in his hands. In the short term, he would only be said a few words behind his back, which would not affect anything. But in the long run, it is hard to say. This year, only 50 or 60 people were used on the barren mountain. Next year, a few more kilns will be opened and a few more acres of land will be planted. Will only 50 or 60 people be used? Li Ju's kindness to the poor contrasted with the other people's inhumanity for the rich, and it was inevitable that they would be targeted. Thinking that he could write another story for Li Ju today, and thinking of the results of his previous thinking, after a banquet, Mr. Huang sent Magistrate Huang back to his mansion, and then sent Li Ju to the door, to get on the car, and took the opportunity to say, brotherly acts in an ancient style, with no distinction between noble and humble, and no respect for superiors and inferiors in his heart. I ask myself, if I can do that, so I admire you very much. I always thought that it was not easy to respect the wise and humble to the humble, but I didn't expect that you have a style that is even more advanced than mine. However, there is a saying that if one's behavior is superior to others, the public will certainly criticize him. I'm not smart, and unless I go against your original intention, there is no hope for me. I wonder if you can solve this situation of criticism. Chapter 63, The Little Thing of Making Friends. Li Ju had already made preparations for the inevitable conflict with local tyrants in the future, and had thought of the way forward. He did not expect that Mr. Huang had already helped him think about things so far in the future. Mr. Huang was actually a local tyrant, and he would also be affected by Li Ju's preferential treatment of tenants and long-term workers, but he was still helping Li Ju think about how to deal with it in the future. Am I more insensitive than you? I also know two truths. The people's hearts can be used. The first is that, if there is profit to be made, people will flock to it. The second is that, these two things are very simple, and Mr. Huang can think of them, but he does not think that this is the solution. Aren't the people's hearts scattered like sand? To lure a tiger with profit is not to seek the skin of the tiger, to harm oneself and benefit the enemy. Li Ju said, sand can also be gathered to build a tower. I believe in the people's hearts. If there are 10,000 or even 100,000 people who do not follow me, there will be millions to tens of millions who will follow me. I'm not driven by profit, so how can I lose the profit? Today we are raising cement together. Tomorrow we are raising textiles together. After dozens of days, their tea, food, silk and satin will all come from me. If they follow me, we will share the wealth and honor. If they do not follow me, we will share their production. Will they not be used by me? Mr. Huang's face turned pale. Do you have a rebellious heart? Li Ju laughed and said, no, it's not the same. When a country prospers, the people suffer. When a country perishes, the people suffer. My ambition is not to be a monarch or a minister, but to make sure that no matter who is the monarch or the minister, the people live and work in peace and contentment, and that the world is united. This is the ambition of the ancient sages. Huang Jiren was stunned by the 8 words. When a country prospers, the people suffer. When a country perishes, the people suffer, which describes the life of the lowest class of people from ancient times to the present. That's exactly it. The heart of scholars like Huang Jiren is to help the world, when you are successful, to learn literary and martial arts, and sell them to the emperor, which is compassion and love from top to bottom, and they value the value of people in order to realize their own value. For example, County Magistrate Huang really loves the people like his own children, but this love for the people is a means for him to realize his political ambitions. Seeing the people under his rule suffering, County Magistrate Huang is also willing to run around and beg for alms, but in the final analysis, he is just a realistic official. If he can see something, he will help out of pity, and if he can't see something, he won't see it. However, in fact, even this kind of compassion and kindness is rare. Magistrate Wang, who was willing to give a grain from the government warehouse to the poor, was already a rare and honest official. No one in power had ever understood the people at the bottom so deeply, and no rich person had ever thought so deeply about the future for the poor. There may be another person, Du Fu, who said, "I wish I had thousands of mansions to shelter all the poor scholars in the world." Huang Zhiren thought a lot, and Li Ju's carriage had arrived. Huang Zhiren personally sent Li Ju to the carriage, and when he saw Chusan also jumped on, he let go of his hand holding the shaft and said, "I will visit you in the future, sir, and I hope you can teach me more." Li Ju lifted the fence on the carriage, stuck his head out, and replied, "I dare not teach you, but I'm willing to discuss with you. I will prepare a bed for you." Black Horse Eze was pulling the carriage, and because of the entanglement of the reins and the shaft, he kicked a few times on the spot in displeasure. He was hit by the driver, and he shook his beautiful hair and walked away. Li Ju returned home and hurriedly annotated the textbook without saying a word. Then he asked the bookstore owner to join the team and take the 1,000 characters and enlarged collection of wise sayings with pinyin into the engraving and printing. As February was about to end, Mr. Huang sent a visiting card saying that he wanted to stay in Lee Garden for a few days. At the end of February, the rice planting and transplanting work had been completed on the barren hills of Lee Garden. The poor relief center and shops outside had also been repaired. So the farmhands in the garden were divided into several shifts every day, wrestling goods for UG goods store, burning cement, pen refills, etc. Each person worked 4 hours a day, and there was another hour for preparation before and after work. There were 5 hours of rest time including washing, eating, sleeping, etc. and another 2 hours were arranged by Li Ju to go to the main hall for classes. This was really a rare thing. Who would teach their own farmhands and maids? But this was forced by Li Ju. The class time was arranged in the morning, and the second meal could only be eaten after the class. Therefore, even Wu Dalong's nearly 70-year-old mother was called to learn to read. In her free time, neighbors came and went. Other old ladies would fan themselves or dust themselves with their whisks and chat, but only old lady Wu would recite to herself the huge characters, such as the sky and the earth are dark yellow and why nets are commonplace. It is rare for a person to live to be 70. The old men from other families were curious and asked, "Why are you studying this? Does your master want you to take the imperial examination?" Old lady Wu also said, "Hey, I'm already in the coffin, with a breath stuck in my neck that can't come out. Why should I take the exam? The master asked me to study, and my son also asked me to study, so I have to recite a few sentences to coax an appetite." The other family said, "Our master and the Li family's master are good friends. When he is not at home, his sister is taken care of by our wife. I asked the master and Master Li to plead for mercy. You are so old, please don't make things difficult for you." Old lady Wu, who had just pretended to be unhappy, immediately turned her face and said, "What are you talking about? How can it be a difficult thing? I'm so old, and I can still be a scholar before I go into the grave. How can it be a difficult thing?" Everyone laughed and coaxed the old lady to write a few words on the ground. They were surprised to see that, although her writing was crooked, she could indeed recognize and write. The story of Li Yuan teaching old women and old livestock herders to read and write soon spread among the neighbors. County Magistrate Wang thought that Li Ju was the first to demonstrate in order to promote pinyin, so he just smiled and waited for Li Ju to prepare the teaching materials so that he could let his servants learn it and see if the progress was satisfactory. However, Mr. Huang could not hold back. He had secretly tried it at home and found that pinyin was particularly effective for people who were completely illiterate. After only a few days of learning, several maids of his daughter could write some essays and records, but they could not write some words and could only use pinyin instead. Mr. Huang thought about the ambition that Li Ju had mentioned that day in the dictionary he had been thinking about for a long time, and finally couldn't help asking someone to send a visiting card. He asked someone to pack his clothes early, and when Li Ju's reply arrived, he hurriedly moved over with his book boy. Next to the newly built living room of Li Yuan, there are 2 sets of side rooms, the east and west wings, symmetrically separated by the living room. Each of them is a small 3-room house connected by a corridor, surrounded by a small garden in the middle, and 2 side rooms, which can be used to store sundries, and for servants and porters to live in. Looking out from the window of the east wing, there is a green farmland, and several farmers are working in the field. One piece of plants has already grown tall and dense, one piece is just a little hairy, another piece is tall without vines, another piece is rice, and another piece is still empty. Not far away, a canal passes through the farmland, and at one end of the upstream is a sparkling small pond. That piece of farmland is a high-yield crop breeding field that Li Ju mentioned. Now Huang Jiren and Wang County Magistrate have regarded Li Ju as an unfathomable hermit, and they can believe his words very much. Only this grain, if he can't see it with his own eyes, he will never believe that there is grain that can produce several times the fruit with the same effort. Mr. Huang wanted to witness this miracle with his own eyes. Besides, the east wing was not far from Li Ju's small building, and they could see each other through the window. Moreover, the landscape in the small garden was the rock and chrysanthemums that Mr. Huang liked, so Mr. Huang chose to live in the east wing. Chapter 64. Build roads first, if you want to get rich. Li Ju arranged the east and west wing rooms for guests in the style of a modern hotel. Although the area was only about 60 square meters, there were plenty of things inside. The small living room had a door to the west and 8 carved tile windows to the east, which allowed excellent light transmission and a fresh and comfortable breeze. To the south of the small living room was the study, which had a desk and 4 study items, as well as a couch that could accommodate 2 people lying down. The study had large windows to the south and east, with a pot of spider plant hanging by the window, full of greenery. In the corner of the study was an ear room, which also had a small bed, a table and chairs. It was a miniature study room, but it was a place for servants or younger generations to live. To the north of the living room was the bedroom, which had a cabinet as high as a wall, a couch, a screen, and a bed. There was nothing special to remember. In the corner of the bedroom was another rear room, which was also small and exquisite like the study, but had everything you could need. The most interesting thing was the small 6-foot square room between the ear room and the corner of the bedroom. It was divided into 2 sections, with a toilet and a bathtub. It was a separate place for washing. When you entered the door, you could only smell a faint scent of agarwood. On the 2 wooden shelves inside were clean bath towels and soaps. Looking further inside, there was a side door for servants to change supplies. Mr. Huang took a look at the environment, told the book boy to put away the luggage, and stood in the study. The first feeling he had was thoughtfulness. It seemed that Li Ju had thought of all his needs in advance, and everything was ready. Hangers for hanging clothes, hat boxes for head crowns, robes, net towels and soft-soled shoes for Yanju, as well as tea, sugar, snacks, etc., were all available. Li Ju, who had accompanied him all the way, said, "Some things in my family are different from other places. I'm afraid that you may misunderstand me, so I have to explain it to you in detail." Huang Jiren said, "Even if you don't tell me, I have something to ask you. I have an idea about the pinyin, and it is not urgent for now. I just want to see what your servants are learning these 2 days. So just tell me the time." Of course. Li Ju called Chusen to write down the schedule. Every day at 7 o'clock, that is, at the time of Chen, everyone must get up, wash up, and gather in the main hall. First, they will practice a set of boxing, or run 5 laps around the fields to strengthen their bodies. After a short rest, they will have their first meal together at 2:30 of Chen. Then, those who are working will go to work in various places, and those who are not working will have a day off and study with me. There are 2 hours of study a day, and we will rest once or twice in between. Before studying every day, I will give a small test. Those who pass the test can have an extra piece of meat at noon, just like those who work. Those who fail the test will not have this privilege. The second meal, lunch, is served at the time of Wei in summer and Wu in winter. In the afternoon, they will rest and play. Every day is like this. There are more than 80 people in our family, and almost everyone can have 1 day of rest after working for 6 days. Of course, during the busy farming season, the morning study will be cancelled, and I will only teach them to recognize words on the rest day. Dinner is served at the exact time of the 12th hour in summer and the first quarter of the 12th hour in winter. The team leader and the person in charge of each major event elected by the people who work before dinner will hand in the details of today's work. Those who do well will be given a piece of meat, and those who do not do well will not be given any. I don't care about what happens after dinner, but everyone must go to bed quietly at the end of the 12th hour at the latest. If I find someone making noise, I will punish him to copy the house rules on the rest day. On the third day of the first lunar month, several times in corresponding places and events were written in pencil on white paper and pressed on the desk in the study. Yaoniang glanced at it. The handwriting was not good, but it was very neat, clear and small. Such small words are also easy to correct, and of course it saves paper. If you want to write such small words with a brush, you need to put in some effort, and you also need a very good small regular script brush. That's great. Li Ju's Kingshan pen can really greatly reduce the cost of education for the poor. Li Ju asked Chusun to note the locations of several places such as the main hall, and then said, I don't go to class every day. Because everyone's progress is different, I usually only choose one day out of 6 to teach, and then the people who teach that day will teach others, and I will choose a few days for spot checks. They learn from each other, and I can be lazy. Generally, I will copy books in the study during the day, or I may ask Wu Dalang and others to figure out some tools. For example, the mule machine that can increase the speed of weaving several times, such as the cement that has been fired, and some books passed down by the elders of the family. Yaoniang nodded. It should be so. I don't know what the origin of your family is, and there is a family tradition worthy of your careful compilation. Li Ju showed a melancholy look on his face. I vaguely remember that it was a fairyland-like place, but now when I think about it, I also think it was a dream. The wish I told you that day was what I saw with my own eyes. There, people did not know the distinction between high and low, regardless of gender, age or status. Everyone loved each other, regardless of the old, weak, women or children. Everyone was well fed and clothed, the elderly were taken care of, and the young were relied on. If there was poverty here, there would be rich people there to help. Every child can go to school for 9 years, and their families only need to pay for food. As for teachers, tutors, textbooks, tables and chairs, pens, and ink, etc., they are all provided by the court. Mr. Yaoniang said, I have never heard of this, but it seems like you have strayed into the peach blossom land. Probably. Since I have seen such a place, I hope that the place where I am can become like this. For this, I have made preparations to fight for it all my life. If you are willing to join me, it will be a great honor for me. Mr. Yaoniang said, although I still doubt that you are dreaming, I really want to see the world you describe with my own eyes. Where are you going to start? With cement and soap? Li Ju shook his head and said, reading, building roads, and growing crops. After thinking about it, these 3 things are the most important. Reading makes people wise and intelligent, and allows knowledge and skills to be passed on faster and more completely. Building roads makes it easier for people to travel, and for students to go to more distant places, to gain knowledge and study, and for different places, to exchange what they have, and what they need. When scholars collide with other scholars, there will be speculation and new ideas will emerge. Isn't it because there are many scholars, and developed water and land transportation in the south of the Yangtze River where literary style flourished the most? Mr. Yaoniang agreed. Yes, in the Jiangnan area, the number of jinshi in each subject is comparable to the sum of several provinces in the north. The reason is that the area is rich and can afford more scholars. Moreover, the land and water roads are extremely developed, so those students in remote areas can always have a school to study, and teachers who are willing to teach students can always go to those schools to teach and educate people. I have also traveled to Yanzhou, hello, and have never seen such a situation. In fact, the significance of developed land and water transportation is far more than that. If you want to be rich, you must build roads first. These 6 words look simple, but the more you think about it, the deeper you think about it, and its significance is far more than just facilitating study and revitalizing the economy. For example, in ancient times when the cost of reading and literacy was extremely high, students must have the support of their whole family to study. At the same time, the success rate of reading is extremely low. The imperial examination is held only once every 3 years, and how many Jirananjanshi can be produced? Those who have been scholars in Tangsheng all their lives, if they accept their fate early, it will be fine. If they don't accept their fate, I'm afraid that their whole family will be involved. So what kind of family would have the awareness of devoting all their efforts to provide education, would tighten their belts, to send their children to school, and could they keep the whole family alive, while providing for their children to study, and survive the bad times of the new year? People in Kingshan County have such insights. The people of Kingshan City have infinitely elevated the status of the imperial examination, abandoned the short-term interests in front of them, saved their time, and gave hope to their family members who can study. For example, Chen Dyeing and Weaving once said that their Chen family provided scholars with the power of the whole family to fight for the imperial examination and be appointed as an official. The insight of this family is far beyond that of other families. At the same time, these families will make 2 preparations. If the children can fight for the single plank bridge, that is the best. If they can't fight, there must be a way to retreat, or study business, or study medicine, or learn other skills. In short, if you can't fight for the imperial examination, you have to have other ways to support your family. Chen Dyeing and Weaving is another example. He is good at business, so he took this path when he had no future in studying, so as not to be trapped on the single plank bridge of the imperial examination. To learn business, medicine, or crafts, you also need the knowledge and objective conditions of your family. You need to be prepared and have a situation where you can display your skills. As Mr. Huang saw it, if it is a remote mountain village with difficult transportation, let alone whether there are parents who are willing to send their children to school, even if there are, can they afford the consequences of failure? If there is such a family that fails in the imperial examination, the family falls into ruin and dies in embarrassment. Will other families dare to take the imperial examination? Dyeing and Weaving Chen can open a cloth shop for a living, because when he can't continue to study, his father can immediately find him a shopkeeper as an apprentice. After a few years, Dyeing and Weaving Chen can start his own business and then provide other relatives with education. All of the above is based on the fact that Kingshan County is well connected, well informed, has complex personnel exchanges, and convenient transportation. In many places that are more secluded than Kingshan County, people who want to gamble on the imperial examination can't afford to gamble their lives. As for other details, the impact is actually very profound. Chapter 65. The unable to afford to hurt. Road construction cannot be accomplished overnight, and it cannot be done without a purpose. Thanks to the dense water network in Jiangnan, at least Li Ju's idea of expanding transportation in Jiangnan is twice as effective with half the effort. Moreover, the promotion of cement gives those who want to build roads a better choice. This thing is cheap and convenient, and has a very high cost effectiveness. Not to mention those who want to do some good deeds are willing to use it. Even those merchants are willing to work together to repair the road. At least it is convenient for their own business to travel. Li Ju was in high spirits and casually drew a map of Kingshan County and several nearby villages and towns. He outlined the cement roads that had already been built on the barren hills and the docks, and then used dotted lines to indicate the roads that he was going to repair next. Please see, sir, I plan to finish repairing these roads before next year. The rivers in these villages in the northwest direction are either too shallow or have too many reefs. Therefore, water transportation is limited, and ships cannot carry heavy cargoes. I think the most urgent task is to connect these roads. This will make it easier for the villagers to go to the city. At least they can sell more grain and cloth, and their children can be sent to the city to study. Mr. Huang followed his train of thought, and had to admit that at least in Li Ju's logic, this was correct. Li Ju circled another point. This is a vacant lot between Liaji cargo store and the dock. It may be flooded every year, but it can be used most of the time. We can't do serious work here, but it's just right to build a big market. Now relying on cement and soap, there will be many foreign merchants willing to come here to place orders. If we build a market here, then when merchants come, they can bring goods, sell them at the market, and then buy what they need to transport away. Isn't it a great opportunity? Huang Zheran said, if there is such a market, the people nearby can boil water, cook, make beds, and stay overnight, which is an extra income. It's a good thing. In modern terms, it can increase employment, reduce costs, and promote economic development. Although Huang Zheran didn't know this, he still grasped the key points very accurately. He was able to study to become a Zheran, and become a guest of the local county magistrate and powerful people. He really has considerable vision and insight. Li Ju said, that's right. If the market is open longer each year, groceries from the north and south, and local rituals from all over the country, can be bought at the market, and more people will definitely be willing to come to the market. The more lively and crowded it is, the richer and more knowledgeable it will be. Qingshan City will become more and more lively. Huang Zheran said, does this have anything to do with your ambitions? Of course it does. At least, more people will be able to eat and rest warmly. The wealth of the world is like water flowing to things. If it is fertile here, it will be lost there. If the people of this county get one more point, won't the people in other places lose one more point? No, wealth can be created. For example, the loom I'm testing now, the mule loom, is more than 10 times more than human power. If there is a mule loom in the world, it can increase the amount of cloth for 10 people. These 10 people can have one more piece of cloth to make clothes, and no one else will lose this piece of cloth. This shows that wealth will increase. If the local people can create more wealth, they can not only have enough food and clothing themselves, but also benefit others. Mr. Huang thought about it for a while, and realized the increase in wealth from the good seeds. He then asked, sir, you have mentioned the loom many times. It seems that you are 100% sure about it, but why haven't you used it yet? Li Ju said, this involves the third thing that I personally think is the most important, food. You should know the significance of food better than I do. People must first fill their stomachs to survive, and secondly, they must protect their loved ones to survive, and then they can seek more. Only with enough food to feed more people can there be more able-bodied men, more students, and more people who can explore forward without distraction. Now I dare not take out the mule machine, because the food and population are really too little. I can't use this to compete with land and food for able-bodied men. And a large amount of cloth will definitely cause an avalanche in cloth prices, which will in turn affect the price increases of cotton and ramie. People will abandon food to grow cotton when they see that it is profitable. As for the reduction in the livelihood of civilians caused by the avalanche of cloth prices, it is another concern. I don't know what will happen. You see, this is my shortcoming of thinking too much. But if there are 10, 20, or 100 people who are familiar with farming, mulberry weaving, industry, agriculture, commerce, and officials here, everyone sits down to discuss, at least they will think of ways to deal with it. Mr. Huang tried to calculate further, but soon he couldn't do it anymore. He said honestly, I don't know what will happen. But I think what you said about the impact on prices, competition for land and able-bodied men is very right. I'll ask you to teach me more in the next few days. I have a feeling that your family tradition is a completely different system of doctrine, which may be of great benefit. Li Ju said, I'm also rereading the books passed down by my ancestors. I hope to encourage each other with you. After settling Mr. Huang, there was another feast for the guests at noon. In the afternoon, Huang Zhi followed Li Ju with great interest to watch his afternoon activities. Li Ju apologized and took a very poor and messy Qing Dynasty edition of Romance of the Three Kingdoms and copied the book. Huang Zhi didn't think much about it. He just took a look and saw that the edition was indeed an ancient artifact. The pages were stuck together, the pages were dirty, and the long texts were unclear. He sighed that he had wasted a good book and admired Li Ju again. He could copy and pass on such a messy book, which showed that he had put a lot of effort in reading it. In order to compare the history of the two planes, Li Ju had people search for all the books that could be bought. The entire study, living room, flower hall, bedroom, etc. were all filled with books. While he was busy copying books, Huang Zhi looked for books to read. Huang Zhi had all the common books on the market. Huang Zhi was also the first to read books from other places. He had read all the books in Li Ju's place, and even remembered most of them. He would take 2 books from time to time, in fact, just to see if there were any signs of flipping through them. Hey, I urged my son to read books at home so much that I subconsciously checked Li Ju's books. Seeing that there were obvious signs of being flipped through the books, although there were not many notes and annotations, they were scattered from beginning to end. Huang Zhi nodded with satisfaction. Although Li Ju obviously had no interest in the imperial examination, he loved reading books, and he could talk to him. He was even more to his liking than those scholars who were fanatical about pursuing imperial examinations. After randomly checking a few books, Huang Zhi wiped his hands with a handkerchief and reached for the bookcase that he had noticed early in the morning and was obviously served by Li Ju himself. The Romance of the Three Kingdoms and the History of the Song Dynasty that Li Ju had copied, as well as the formulas and drawings for making cement, soap, honeycomb coal, etc., were all in there. Huang Zhi was in a dilemma for a while and finally took down the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. He could read books at any time. He wanted to read all the books on this shelf, but the most annoying thing was the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Trashy Li Ju, the update was so slow. The last serial was about Wang Sita sowing discord at Fengai Pavilion, and Dao Chan entered Deng Zuo's mansion, and then there was nothing below. He wanted to read the rest of the story so much that he lost his appetite. Although there were also stories about Wang Situ's beauty trap to kill 2 heroes in folk rumors and small dramas in the brothels, they were not as thrilling as this Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Let's wait for those books like the complete works of Lin Shun. It's too expensive to follow the serials. Chapter 66, Huang Zhi's Lee Garden Observations 1. Li Ju copied 2 chapters of Romance of the Three Kingdoms. In the remaining time, he checked the accounts, approved the purchase order, checked an account, and looked at the progress of the farmland, orchard, barren hills, and earthen kilns. He made sure that all the progress was in line with the plan. Only then did he put down the existing chores and prepare for the next thing. Pinayin has been put on the agenda, and Romance of the Three Kingdoms has accumulated some experience. County Magistrate Wang and Huang Zhi took the initiative to promote Pinayin. Then it is time to take advantage of the slack season to teach everyone. Because the people in his mansion eat the food of the Li family and take the money of the Li family, they learn whatever Li Ju asks them to learn. The Analects of Confucius, algebra, nature, 300 poems, enlarged collection of wise sayings, they have to learn them all. Xiaolian has started to learn plane geometry. But people outside are different. Li Ju dares to teach algebra outside. I'm afraid that the number of people who come to learn is not as many as the sparrows on the tree. Therefore, Li Ju chose to use Romance of the Three Kingdoms as the textbook for the extracurricular. First, it is convenient to bring his private goods farther. Second, the story is interesting and familiar, which is convenient for the people to accept. Third, it is a serialized book. Look how Huang Zhi is in suspense. Such a book that can whet people's appetite is enough for them to study seriously for a year or 2. After Li Ju and Huang Zhi discussed this, Huang Zhi thought that it was better to follow up with others than to follow up alone, and he agreed with Li Ju's plan very much, and even took the initiative to propose to do dialect phonetic notation for Romance of the Three Kingdoms with Li Ju. Huang Zhi was going to secretly put some annotations in it. This is a work that is destined to be passed down through the ages, so let him be the first annotator. By then, the Romance of the Three Kingdoms that the whole world reads will be the original work of Luo Guanzhong, the compilation of Li Ju, and the annotations of Huang Gangfeng, and his reputation will inevitably spread throughout the world with this book. Wouldn't his life be perfect then? It was almost dusk and time for dinner. Li Ju took the Romance of the Three Kingdoms from Huang Zhi and put it back on the table, saying with a smile, "From this meal, please have dinner with me, sir. Our family, including myself, all eat from the big pot in the kitchen. Everyone's food is exactly the same, just the quantity is different. Unless we are entertaining guests, we will prepare separate meals. I'm happy to buy meat and vegetables privately and add 1 or 2 bowls. Some of their long-term workers don't like to save money and like to eat good food, so they are willing to add dishes with me. If you want to cook for yourself, that's fine. You can ask someone to buy vegetables and send them to the kitchen, or ask the buyer to bring them to you. You don't have to charge extra for cooking. So it should be. I came to your Lee garden not to be free and easy, but to see how you do things. My eating and living habits should be similar to yours. Huang Zhi didn't care much about food, but he was picky. He thought that the so-called big pot meal was not delicious, so he would have to cook more for himself. This is also the case for wealthy families. Everyone eats from the same pot. If they want to eat something fresh and favorite, they will pay extra money to ask the small kitchen to cook it separately. Li Yuan is not the only one who does this. Huang Zhi asked, but who will do the shopping? I only brought 2 book boys with me. If I go shopping myself, I'm afraid I will be too busy. Li Ju said, if there is anything missing or needed in each place, please report it to the foreman who can read, and the foreman will send it to Sanjiu. Sanjiu will arrange this matter himself. Whether it is sent from outside or someone in the family goes out to buy, it will be handed over to them in full. Brother Huang, I'm going to match a child to pass on messages. Brother Huang, please take care of it. Huang Zhi said, okay, bring it here for me to take a look. Li Ju called Wu Shuangai, the son of Wu Daoling, and asked him to pay his respects to Huang Jian, and told him to be obedient. Huang Zhi looked up and down, and found the child to be well behaved. He praised him casually and asked, this is a boy. If I remember correctly, the Sanjiu you mentioned is a maid. This, Li Ju said, Sanjiu is a straightforward person. You don't have to worry about the distinction between men and women. Usually, when there are many people line up to send her shopping orders. Huang Zhi frowned and said, of course I believe in your family tradition. I'm just afraid that people outside will blame me if they know about it. Maids in our family have their duties. They are together with the young ladies and don't interact with the outside world. Li Ju had a lot to say, but in the end he only said, she is not a maid. She is a head of the household. But she works here to earn money to support herself. It's not easy for a woman to be the head of the household. Who can't she see? The people here are all honest and decent. Even if there are some bad people, she can tell me, and I will naturally do justice for her. Huang Zhi still felt something was wrong, but because Li Garden was different from other places, he followed the principle of the guest following the host's wishes, and did not continue to ask. Li Ju asked again, sir, do you want to eat in the main hall or at home? Everyone should be gathered in the main hall at this time, and each person should find a place to eat. Some people also take food back to their rooms, but they have to send the bowls and chopsticks to the washroom to wash them. Huang Zhi said, today is the first day, I will do as you wish. What do you think, brother Li? Li Ju smiled and said, if there are many things to do, eat at home. If there are few things or you want to see the workers, you can eat in the main hall. Today, please move over. Let's go to the big kitchen. Since you are here to understand the truth with me, then you should take a close look inside and outside. This day was still winter time, and the meal was served at the beginning of the evening. After a busy day, people lined up in the kitchen in groups of 3 or 4 to get rice and dishes. Generally, several people would put together several dishes of different flavors, and then share them, or take them back to the room, or gather with familiar people to chat and eat. The main hall was a bit dark, not as sunny as outside, so most people chose to eat outdoors. Due to the rules of Li Garden, everyone had to pay attention to their appearance and cleanliness of the environment at all times. Therefore, although there were many people eating outdoors, the ground was still clean everywhere. When everyone saw Li Ju appear, they subconsciously put down their bowls and stood up. Master. Li Ju's scalp tingled, his old face flushed, and he waved his hands quickly. You guys eat and drink. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about me. There's no need to do this. Huang Zhi followed him step by step, twisting his beard thoughtfully. The farmhands ate, the married families ate together, the unmarried men and women gathered separately, and some who were a little interested in each other gathered together to talk about love. As long as the relationship is clear, Li Ju sees that the two are interested, so he usually assumes that they can live their own lives. If they get married, he will send some gifts. Although they gather together separately, there is no special taboo between men and women. Huang Zhi saw with his own eyes that a man stood up and walked to the female relatives. He said something from 3 steps away. Only when one of the female relatives responded to him did he go back. The long-term workers in Lee Garden will be issued several sets of clothes every year. These clothes are of the same pattern, regardless of gender, all blue, grey, black, and brown robes, shirts, and trousers. Everyone seems to consciously wear the clothes issued as work clothes, and separate them from the beautiful clothes for special events. Lee Ju sometimes orders a few rolls of cloth, or takes some discounted cotton cloth from the dyeing and weaving chain, and asks Sanju and Yaoniang to make new clothes for everyone. Such new clothes are generally regarded as formal wear. Everyone cherishes them very much, and dares to wear them only on very special occasions. On working days, everyone dared to wear the clothes they were given, so Huang Zhi saw that everyone in Liyuan was dressed similarly, with short hair, and it was hard to tell whether they were men or women. Everyone interacted naturally and behaved appropriately, which was much better than what Huang Zhi had thought, that men and women were flirting with each other. Huang Zhi couldn't help but compare the situation in the wealthy families, small workshops and Liyuan that he had seen, and fell into deep thought. Chapter 67, Huang Zhi's Lee Garden Observations 2. In Huang Zhi's impression, whether it was his own family or the families he often interacted with, whether they were scholarly families, nobles, or small families or local forces, there was no servant like Li Yuan. Generally, maids would dress plainly and gracefully. Except for the rough maids, most maids were only a little bit richer than the ladies of the master's family. As for their manners and attitudes, they were no different from the ladies. Therefore, the separation between men and women among servants was no different from that between ordinary families. Male servants were mostly active at the second gate or outside, doing things such as sweeping, tidying up, running errands, carrying, and transmitting messages, while female servants were mostly working in the boudoir, kitchen, and around women. Their work was needlework, sweeping, cooking, and washing. They ate in their own rooms, and did not get together. Unless the masters they served were close, it was normal not to see each other for years. If male and female servants were mixed together, that would be troublesome. They would either unite to cheat the master, or collude to commit shameful things. The most distinctive feature is the distinction between inside and outside, and the distinction between errands. Every household is like this. Even for those families who can only buy a maid to serve, this maid will not do the work. That is the job of the men in this family. She still follows the wife to do things. The most typical example is Yaoniang. What kind of work did Yaoniang not do when she was in the Yu family? Compared with the little maids of other families, Yaoniang seemed to do a lot of men's work. But in the village, what Yaoniang did was not essentially different from that of ordinary farm girls and farm women. It was indeed the work of women, just cutting pig grass, sweeping, carrying water, cooking, chopping wood, etc. The unkindness of the Yu family was that they pushed the work of 3 girls and 1 daughter-in-law to Yaoniang alone, so that Chunyang and Yaoniang were supported like girls in the city. Li Yuan did not have such a clear gender division. Those who were strong did the heavy work, those who were willing to run outside did the work outside, those who liked to cook stayed in the kitchen, and those who were good at needlework did needlework. Everyone ran together in the morning, worked together during the day, and ate together at night. There was no other difference except for the different types of work. Huang Zhi followed Li Ju and observed without saying a word. Li Ju responded to the people who kept greeting him. He probably couldn't stand this kind of stopping after every step. He walked very fast, rushed into the kitchen in a few steps, and breathed a long sigh of relief. Shibalang, Xiaolian, who were busy at the stove in the kitchen, and Yaoniang, who was eating at the table in the corner, stood up and shouted in unison, "The master is here. Greet the master." Li Ju's hair stood on end. No, what are we having today? Shibalang opened the lid of the pot and said, "One is braised pork belly with beans and eggplant, which is a heavy dish. One is winter melon, shrimp skin and bone soup. Another is braised fish with black bean sauce." And the master added braised chicken breast meat. Simple home-cooked dishes, because Shibalang's cooking skills are excellent. They are not worse than those in the shops outside. Li Ju took his rice into the box and asked Huang Zhi whether he wanted to add some more or eat together. Huang Zhi said, "Just the same as the master." I came here for my good brother. Shibalang was smart and gave Huang Zhi an identical meal and asked the two servants who followed Huang Zhi what they wanted to eat. The two servants usually did not dare to do the same as the host, so they served one dish and one soup like everyone in Li Yuan. Even as a trusted servant in the Huang family, there was little meat to eat except during festivals. The Li family's dishes were local and crude, but they had meat and were fragrant, which immediately made the Huang family's dishes look better. Huang Zhi also knew that it was not easy to eat meat, and it was even more rare that Li Ju had 2 bowls of meat dishes. Li Ju took the food box and sat down in the small lounge in the main hall next to the kitchen, rolled up the curtains, and let the sun in. Shibalang followed and hurriedly arranged the food. The food for the 2 masters was placed on the Kang table, and the food for the 2 book boys was placed on the small stool below. After doing all this, Shibalang was not in a hurry to leave, but looked at Li Ju eagerly. Huang Zhi put a chopstick in each of the 3 bowls. The thick sauce was very strong and went well with rice. It was obvious that a lot of money had been spent. The sauce, salt, and oil were not cheap, and the vegetables were generous. The fried pork belly was 2 fingers thick with fat, all good stuff. It was just not to his taste. Huang Zhi had always eaten small dishes, but had never seen such a grand cooking method. The chicken breast looked salty, but it was actually fresh and delicious, and it didn't seem like it was cooked by the same person as the other 2 dishes. In the end, Huang Zhi gave the fish with black bean sauce and the pork belly with eggplant and beans to the 2 servants, and he ate half a bowl of rice with a bowl of winter melon and shrimp soup and chicken breast. Li Ju first picked the small dish he ordered, the chicken breast, and ate it carefully. Shibalang looked at Li Ju expectantly, wanting to hear Li Ju praise him, and his eyes were full of expectations. Li Ju found his hesitant expression like a puppy very interesting. He frowned, grinned, and nodded to tease him for a while, then said, "You've improved. This breast meat is good, high in protein and low in fat. You should eat more too. Before you become adults, you can't do without meat, eggs, poultry, and milk every day." Shibalang was satisfied. He rubbed his hands with a smile and prepared to go back to cook. "I know. What would the master like to order tomorrow? I made the taro paste with meat that the master recommended last time twice, but Sister Sanjiu and Sister Xiaolian thought it was too sweet. Does the master really like that?" Xiaolian, who followed her like a little tail, also echoed a few words. Li Ju said, "Well, I want to eat it. Make me some taro with meat. If others want to eat braised pork, but don't like sweet food, I'll make them some with fermented black beans and pickles. That's just a way of cooking, not that it can only be served with taro." Huang Zhi asked, "Did he make all these dishes?" Shibalang grinned. "To answer Mr. Huang's question, I made them all. Why are the flavors so different? These 2 have too much oil and salt, and are very similar to the Dongshan method. But the chicken breast is just right. Is it the taste we have here?" Shibalang looked at Li Ju and saw Li Ju nodded, then said, "Salty food goes well with rice, and more oil makes you stronger. It's always good for everyone to eat more, so we deliberately cook it a little heavier. Our master likes it too." The chicken breast was prepared by the master as he might want to entertain guests, so we followed the popular style here, marinated it with rice wine, used scallion and ginger water to remove the fishy smell, and cooked it with scallion oil. How did Mr. Huang like it? "Very good." Huang Zhi clarified the doubts in his mind and happily drank half a bowl of soup. After putting this aside, Huang Zhi couldn't help but count the expenses for Li Ju. A bowl of roast pork belly must have a few pieces of good fat. A bowl of fish chunks must have 4 or 5 pieces of good fish fillets, and it is drizzled with oil, salt, sauce and vinegar. And then there are vegetables and proper food for cooking. A total of 80 or 90 people a day must be enough for at least 1 or 2 taels of silver. It's really incredible. A farmer can eat what he eats in a month for a year." Li Ju said, "That's not necessary. Only people who do heavy physical work can eat pork belly, and there are only about a dozen people in total. After that bowl of pork belly, the remaining vegetables can be purchased with only 6 coins of silver. And..." Li Ju hesitated for a moment. "There are ways to raise pigs and fish. After some time, when the grain harvest is good and there is a surplus, I will use my family's ancestral livestock breeding methods, and naturally I can get more meat a year. When our own pigs, sheep, chickens, ducks, etc. grow up, and next year there will be cheaper vegetable oil, and if I want to eat some meat and vegetables, it won't be that expensive. Huang Zhi became interested. What kind of method is it? Can I see it? Li Ju said, of course. I don't plan to be a pig farmer. If I can teach it to others, that would be the best, and it will bring us closer to the day when everyone can eat meat. Chapter 68. Is it necessary? On the first day in Li Garden, Mr. Huang had a very rich harvest. That night, he made an exception and lit a candle to record his experience. He didn't understand why Li Ju insisted on removing the boundaries between men and women, and instead used strength and skills as the standard for distinguishing between types of work. He also didn't understand why Li Ju had a natural attitude towards servants, without any color of superiority looking down on inferiority. Li Ju's attitude towards servants was different from that towards County Magistrate Wang. Perhaps only he respected County Magistrate Wang more. These two things are related. Li Ju really had no concept of superiority and inferiority, so in his eyes there was no one else and no self, no distinction between men and women, old and young, sick and disabled. At the same time, Li Ju was smooth. In order to walk better in the world, he would take up the concept of superiority and inferiority that he didn't like when necessary. Huang Zhi remembered the peach blossom land described by Li Ju. People have never known that people are divided into superiority and inferiority, no matter men and women, old and young, everyone loves each other, no matter the old and weak, women and children, everyone is well fed and clothed, the elderly are well supported, and the young have someone to rely on. He is still living in that peach blossom land. After taking note of this experience, Huang Zhi also wrote down the phonetic notation of Romance of the Three Kingdoms and the matter of raising livestock. In addition, there is the matter of purchasing for the small kitchen. Huang Zhi roughly figured out how Li Yuan's kitchen operates. Tomorrow, he also wants to try the taro paste with meat ordered by Li Ju. In addition, he also wants to add silver sprouts and shredded pork and snowflake fish fillet. He has to remind Tonja and Wu Shuangai to tell them. Tomorrow morning, I will listen to Li Ju's class first, then eat. In the afternoon, I will help Li Ju to annotate the book, and by the way, listen to how Li Ju plans to teach people outside to recite Pinyin. Who knows what interesting discoveries will be made. Huang Zhi rode for a little hour, and when it was quiet everywhere, and the night watchman walked around to guard the door, Huang Zhi went to the small house to wash up, put on the Yanju clothes sent by Li Ju and lay down. Before going to bed, Huang Zhi was still thinking that, if Li Ju opened a hotel in a big city, he would probably make a lot of money. This guest room is more comfortable and convenient than the main room in his house. He will definitely copy a set for his own home tomorrow. The next morning, Huang Zhi climbed up from the big bed specially provided in the east wing and patted the mattress reluctantly. This thing is good. I wonder if he still has it? After noting comfortable bedding in Li Garden's experience, Huang Zhi washed his face, brushed his teeth, combed his hair, and got dressed with the help of his servant. While he was busy, Wu Shuangai came. He knocked on the door outside. I greet Mr. Huang. Our master is now exercising under the big apple tree by the field, and asked me to ask Mr. Huang where his breakfast is. Huang Zhi asked, where is your master's breakfast? I'll go with him. Wu Shuangai replied, the master usually has breakfast in the kitchen. The master eats very quickly, usually it only takes a few minutes. The implication is that it is not recommended for Huang Zhi to go with him. Huang Zhi could not help but frowned. This is not a good habit. Rice needs to be chewed slowly. Don't you all advise the master? Wu Shuang was young, honest, and kind-hearted, and answered in detail. Our master doesn't like to be served, and no one has ever followed him. No one followed him? Huang Zhi recalled for a moment, and it was true. Li Ju didn't have a servant girl around him. The maid who served tea and water only served tea and water, and the one who cooked in the kitchen only cooked. No one was specifically responsible for taking care of Li Ju's daily life. Your master is amazing. Huang Zhi didn't want to embarrass himself, so he asked Wu Shuang to take the book boy to get breakfast. Several people ate in the East Wing and told the book boy to send it to be washed according to the rules of Lee Garden. Huang Zhi put on a spring shirt, looked at the time on the pocket watch, and walked around the fields, ponds, and canals of Lee Garden. Seeing that the time was about the same, he went to the main hall for class with the people who were resting in Lee Garden. It was almost the 11th hour of the morning, except for those who were working in the garden. All the 20 or so people who stayed in Lee Garden came to the main hall. Going to school was mandatory, but everyone came voluntarily. From the young children to the elderly, everyone washed their hands, put on freshly washed clothes, took their own benches, textbooks, and pencils, and sat down quietly in front of the main hall. This was the last batch of students to come to learn the first lesson. The next batch of students would learn the rest of the content. The first lesson was divided into 2 sections. The first section was Chinese, starting with pinyin, and the second section was mathematics, learning simple counting, and odd and even numbers. Most of the people present were illiterate, and they couldn't even count to 100. Li Ju taught them twice, and asked San Jiu, Chu Sanlang and others to take over the class, so they were mentally prepared for the basics of learning. But then again, people with no basics will learn new knowledge faster, and white paper is always easier to color than black paper. Li Ju pasted 2 pinyin tables on the black, painted wooden board in front of the main hall, and taught pronunciation and writing one by one. After teaching, he called out the names one by one to practice individually until everyone learned to pronounce the pinyin. Like the modern pinyin table, Li Ju provided common pictures for each initial and final consonant to facilitate everyone's association and memory. Facts have proved that these simple and vivid pictures can indeed greatly improve everyone's reading efficiency. In the first class, we only learned recognition. Writing is the work after class. The first thing to do in the next class is to dictate. Li Ju plans to teach together for half a year, and then divide the classes according to the progress after half a year. Then, class 1 and class 2 will teach class 3 and class 4, and he can save a lot of work. Huang Jiu said nothing, found a place to sit down at the back of the main hall, and watched Li Ju teach these servants to read one sound at a time. Among this group of people, only one girl of 5 or 6 years old learned quickly. The others stuttered and took almost an incense stick of time to learn one aoeiuv. The old man in his 60s was even more outstanding. Although he was so anxious that he kept slapping his head, he still only learned to read O. Huang Zhi opened the textbook handed by the book boy. The textbook was very thick. On the cover were 4 words shu and ki with pinyin. It was estimated that there would be a second and a third. The first 2 pages of the text were pinyin tables, and the rest were 1,000 characters, Zhenguang Xianwen and Analects of Confucius. The textbook used large characters, a lot of blank space, and even pictures. In the blank space, there were notes taken by the first few students in class. Some notes were just a rudimentary form, while others were just a bunch of pinyin, and no one knew what they meant. It was enough to see how big the gap was between the students. People with poor talents, old people with one foot in the coffin, girls who would not be convenient to go to school with men when they grow up. What was the point of them learning these? It is true that all things are inferior except for reading. However, if everyone reads, wants to be an official, and is unwilling to do menial work, can the world become the utopia in Li Ju's dream? Huang Zhi was puzzled. He wrote this down in the notebook he carried with him, and asked Li Ju to solve his doubts when he had time. When it came to mathematics class, Huang Zhi was even more confused. Arithmetic is something that Confucian students also have to learn, but what is the use of ordinary people learning it? Even if you know the 3-legged 4 mysterious 5, what can you do? Except for the purchaser and the accountant, isn't it enough for others to count? Flipping back the mathematics textbook, Huang Zhi himself couldn't understand the symbols, but from the exercises, it can be seen that there will be at least a chicken and rabbit in the same cage problem later. Even if they are students of the imperial examination, they can only understand this kind of problem. Except for the officials in charge of population, money, and food, others will never use it in their lives. Thousands of words are summed up in one sentence. Is it necessary? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69. Serialization of Romance of the Three Kingdoms. During lunch break, Huang Zhi couldn't help but tell Li Ju about his confusion. He thought about it for the whole morning and seemed to have figured out something, but he just couldn't figure it out. He hoped that Li Ju could give him an answer that would make him suddenly enlightened. Unexpectedly, Li Ju was also confused. Frankly speaking, I don't know what's the point of most people learning these. It is true that they may not use this knowledge in their entire lives. Huang Zhi said, yes, it's a waste of time to spend so much time and effort to learn things that they will never use in their entire lives. But I think they have the right to see the world in the book. After knowing these principles, they may feel that they don't need to continue learning, so they won't learn. But at least they should step into the door of this world first, see it with their own eyes, and then make this decision. Li Ju himself is a typical example of someone who didn't study well, but he neither regretted studying nor regretted choosing to give up writing and join the army after confirming that he couldn't read. Besides, what if there really is a saint among them? Maybe some have inherited a craft from their family and can record their craft for future generations to learn. Maybe some are good at music and write excellent drama scripts to be passed down to future generations. Maybe some are good at painting, maybe some are good at music, and maybe some have realized the truth. Some have learned to study. It won't let such people live in confusion, which can be considered a merit. Huang Zhi said, being confused and unaware of the world and books for a lifetime is not too bad. I'm more worried that they will get a glimpse of the way, but cannot go further. It is better not to know. At least, they won't be too disappointed or too painful. One of the elders in my family once raised this question. If people are sleeping in a room and there is a fire outside the room, if they are woken up, they may be able to escape from the fire, but they are more likely to watch themselves and their companions being burned to death. If they are not woken up, they will die in their sleep and will not know the pain of being burned to death. In this case, wouldn't waking them up make them more painful? Huang Zhi said, that's true. If this is the case, it is better to end this life in a dream than to suffer alive. But another elder said, that's not the case. Since they can be woken up, there is hope of escape. Maybe ignorance can be considered luck, but this kind of luck is simply covering up the truth. The story told by Li Ju was adapted from Lu Xun's Call to Arms, but the current situation is not as dark as the one Mr. Lu Xun once lived in. At least this world is peaceful and hopeful, so it seems even brighter. Li Ju said, I want to wake them up and let them understand more truths. This knowledge may be useless to most people, but what if it is useful? Huang Zhi pondered for a long time, until Li Ju had started to prepare the extra-large phonetic serialized version of Romance of the Three Kingdoms, to be promoted on the streets outside. Huang Ju looked up and smiled. You are right. I think it is useless for them to learn it. I think so myself. But I'm not them. I'm not a fish, so I don't know the joy of fish. I can't take it for granted that they think it is useful or useless. Whether it is pain or regret, they should decide for themselves. What's more, there is no distinction between people in education. Those who are willing to listen to education, even if they are monkeys, should be taught well. My brother is really broad-minded. This time, my trip was not in vain. Li Ju also smiled and said, I didn't invite you here in vain. The large print version of Romance of the Three Kingdoms still needs you to come. I'm good at writing hard pen calligraphy, but I can't write big characters with a brush. Please help me, sir. Huang Zhi loved Romance of the Three Kingdoms very much. Even if Li Ju didn't invite him, he wanted to volunteer to come, but he couldn't let others take the opportunity. Huang Zhi called his book boy to grind ink and spread paper, saying, okay, give me a jar of Xiangsu wine as a writing tool later. Li Ju built a shed outside Li Garden that could shelter from the rain. He planned to copy Romance of the Three Kingdoms in large characters and put it on the display board under the shed with illustrations in Pinyin. Every day, he would find someone who knew pinyin to stand in the shed to teach pinyin, and by the way, he would watch over the copying of books, to prevent the posted books from being secretly torn up and taken for themselves. Now there is only Romance of the Three Kingdoms, and he will accept stories written by other people in the future. In addition, Li Ju also planned to invite a storyteller to tell stories outside, once a day, and only tell half of it. For the rest of the story, Xiang can only try to understand it by himself. In order to facilitate local people to read, this version of Romance of the Three Kingdoms is annotated according to the local dialect, which can speed up the promotion of pinyin. The locals in Jiacheng have never heard of Mandarin in their lives, so it would be too difficult to directly publish the Mandarin version. What font should I use? Guanjet style. It is straight and horizontal, although it doesn't have much flavor, but it is the most standard. Huang Zhi agreed, so he copied Lin Jiangxin on it in Guanjet style, and then copied it down in order. There were only 50 characters on a piece of paper that big, and each character was clear, and could be seen clearly from a long distance. Li Ju took another piece of paper and pen, and started to draw illustrations. The first story was the 10 Eunuchs Disorderly Government and the Brotherhood of Liu, Guan and Zhang. The Peach Garden Brotherhood had been drawn once by Ran Zichen before, and the draft was still there, so Li Ju only made a draft for the 10 Eunuchs picture, so that it could be handed over to the outside painter to copy. The large size was placed in the outside shed, and the small size was prepared for printing the book. Since the last time he talked to Ran Zichen about finding an artist, Ran Zichen has found quite a few, one of whom is a somewhat stupid man with only one hand. The man who copied the painting was named Zhang. He made a living by drawing embroidery patterns, which were usually called Xiaoyang. If he was asked to draw by himself, he would never be able to do it in his lifetime. But if he was asked to copy a simple line drawing like the one given by Li Ju, no matter it was the original size, or enlarged or reduced, he could copy it very well. Except for the thickness of the lines, everything else was exactly the same. Because Xiaoyang Zhang was honest, dyeing and weaving Chen would take extra care of him. Those lower level jobs were generally assigned to him first. Xiaoyang Zhang was grateful, but he didn't know how to repay him. Li Ju looked at the painting sent by dyeing and weaving Chen and decided on this person temporarily, but he didn't take the time to see him in person. On this day, he finished the illustration and remembered this matter. He asked Chu Sanlang to find someone to send a message to bring Xiaoyang Zhang to him and let him copy this new illustration again. Li Yuan's reputation had long been spread throughout Qingshan City. The wealthy families also watched Li Ju's every move, and the common people and the lower classes were particularly concerned about Li Yuan. Xiaoyang Zhang was no exception. Dyeing and weaving Chen often asked people to make patterns, and those who could trace patterns in the city were all on good terms with dyeing and weaving Chen. Dyeing and weaving Chen suddenly asked them to trace the picture, saying that if they drew well, they would have a big business that would support them for the rest of their lives. Those people did their best to make the peach garden both full of flowers, adding colors, backgrounds, and details. Each one was different and beautiful. Only the embroidery sample Zhang handed in a picture that was almost the same as the original. Although the embroidery sample Zhang was stupid, she knew very well that she was not as good as a normal person. As long as she had a meal and a bowl of water to drink, she would be fine. Therefore, she did not expect that the big business mentioned by dyeing and weaving Chen would fall into her hands. This day, dyeing and weaving Chen sent another picture and asked her to enlarge it and trace it. The embroidery sample Zhang was very surprised. The original picture was only 1 foot long and 6 inches wide, and the traced picture had to be 3 feet long and 2 feet 4 inches wide. Although there were many figures on the picture, the lines were still so simple and clear. It was not difficult for the embroidery sample Zhang to enlarge it according to the picture. The embroidery sample Zhang happened to have nothing to do, so he traced it immediately and sent it back to Liaji goods store to be handed over to dyeing and weaving Chen before dusk. Dyeing and weaving Chen received the painting. He could also see that the imitation painting of the embroidery sample was not very delicate and beautiful, but it was very consistent with Li Ju's requirements lifelike. He thought that, since he had nothing to do anyway, he might as well take the embroidery sample to show it to Li Ju. If Li Ju was satisfied and kept someone He would not have to arrange work for the embroidery sample Zhang. If he was not satisfied, he would find a better one as soon as possible. In addition, the embroidery sample Zhang also copied 2 paintings for Li Ju. Li Ju gave the embroidery sample Zhang a meal, which was worthy of his labor, right? The most important thing was that, if he rushed to Li Garden at this time, he might be able to get another delicious meal. In this way, Li Ju handed over an illustration in the afternoon, and received the finished product at lunchtime. This efficiency made Li Ju very satisfied. Chapter 70 The glory of a time traveler comes from changing fate. Li Ju asked the kitchen to add 2 dishes to the dyeing and weaving Chen and the embroidery sample, and he also ate something with them. After eating, he brought the embroidery sample to the main hall and asked him to draw an illustration on the big black lacquer board with chalk. The way of drawing embroidery samples is different from the general drawing method. Drawing is generally divided into layout, structure, and then refinement. If it is Li Ju, there will be an additional step of sketching the framework in the middle. But the embroidery sample is different. He draws it like a printer prints, tracing it line by line from top to bottom. For example, the relative position of the headscarf and hair. Li Ju's original drawing may be a turning point composed of 2 lines, but the embroidery sample is drawn from the headscarf to the hair. Combined with a chat with the embroidery sample during the meal, Li Ju can see that the embroidery sample is a little bit silly, but at the same time, he really maximumed out the imitation skills. He just saw the new illustration today, and the total time will not exceed 2 hours, but he can still imitate it exactly, without looking at the order of the strokes, etc. There is no difference at all. He is really a talent. Illustrations should be simple, clean, clear and powerful. Those who add fancy patterns to them are useless. The printing industry at that time could not print those fancy patterns. Li Ju was satisfied with this person. Dyeing and weaving Chen took the opportunity to tell him about the situation at the embroidery sample Zhang's home. He is a really honest person. He was quite spiritual when he was a child. The peony flowers he painted could attract butterflies. Later, a blind bear bit off one of his arms. He came back with a fever and became stupid and incurable. He only has an old mother in his family. She is not very old, but she has gone blind, just to supplement the family income. I also persuaded his mother to find him a wife, to take care of him, and supplement the family income. More people always have more ways. His mother refused, saying that she did not dare to delay a good girl because of her son. If it was not a good girl, she would not dare to marry her into the family. Li Ju then became more fond of the mother and daughter of Yu Yaoniang, and said, he has some knowledge. I don't know how to tell him. You are familiar with him, so you can tell him. Just work for me, and sign a contract. In his situation, I don't mind him bringing his mother in, or seeing them off. But he will get less wages for his work. After all, he has less work to do, and his mother probably can't do much either, so some of the wages should be saved for their retirement. Ran Chen patted his chest loudly. Brother, you are so straightforward. I will talk to his mother tomorrow. You just need to give her a meal and a piece of clothing, and she will agree. He will stay at your place tonight. Don't worry, he just doesn't have a smart enough brain, and is a little slow in dealing with people, but he can take care of himself. You can find a kind person to teach him, and he will remember it after 3 times at most. It only took me 2 days to teach him how to draw the pattern and tell him what to ask for. Except for not being able to tinker with new things by himself, he can do everything else. His mother is not a freeloader. Even if she is blind, she can weave straw sandals, baskets, bags and so on. Just pay for this meal and hire this man. It's a huge profit. Ran Chen watched Li Ju arrange the embroidery samples that night and paid a sum of money to give to the embroidery sample's mother. As it was too late, he stayed overnight in Li Ju's study. The next morning, Li Ju went out to practice boxing. Dyeing and weaving Chen went to the shop to check the situation first, and then went to the embroidery Zhang's house to explain everything to the embroidery Zhang's mother. The embroidery Zhang's mother was picking wild vegetables with the neighbors at the door of her house. The neighbors felt sorry for her, but she didn't want to take other people's benefits for free. So the neighbors asked her for help with any work they had, and gave her a bowl of rice and a piece of clothing, and she was willing to accept it. Dying and Weaving Chen had a lot of contacts with the Zhang family, and she was familiar with her neighbors. As soon as Dying and Weaving Chen appeared, the young women in the neighborhood all hid in their houses, while the old ones stepped back a little and talked to him. Shopkeeper Chen is here. I heard that the embroidered spring yarn in your store is selling very well recently. Business is booming. Shopkeeper Chen is here to visit them again. Dalong is not here. He said he went out to draw samples. Dying and Weaving Chen smiled and dealt with the women, then said to embroidery sample Zhang's mother, "Hello, sister. It's been a while. I have good news for you. Do you think it's a good idea? Mr. Lee from Lee Garden in the south of the city wants to hire your son to paint. There are so many people who draw blessing pictures in my shop, and Mr. Lee fell in love with Dalong's paintings at first sight." The old lady also heard about Lee Garden from the neighbors, this good place that beggars would try their best to get into. She rubbed her eyes and said, "You have said good things to us again. The fact that my son and I can live to this day is all thanks to your kindness. How can we repay you? You guessed wrong this time. I didn't help to intercede. Mr. Lee wants to do his job, and I dare not cause trouble for him. He chose Dalong himself. He said that he was solid and would do what he said and would never be clever. When Mr. Lee heard what I said about your family's situation, he said that he was willing to keep Dalong in the garden and promised that Dalong would take you to Lee Garden to enjoy a peaceful life. He also said that he would take care of you and your son in your old age, but the wages would be less, about 7 or 8 cents a day." Afraid that the old lady couldn't figure out the accounts, Dying and Weaving Chen calculated for her how many embroidery patterns these 7 or 8 cents would be converted into a year, and concluded that it was about the same as what embroidery samples Zhang earned in a year before. Then he continued, "I thought that Lee Yuan has less work, more people and less time, and they provide food, accommodation, and clothes. How much money can it be worth with just these 3 things? Your house is in such a mess. It was worn out last year, and I don't know if it can withstand the typhoon this year. Why not agree to Mr. Lee and move in before the plum rain? Rent this house to someone who can clean it up and get a few dozen yuan a month, which is not bad." The old lady was very happy. 7 or 8 yuan a day was almost the same as what the coolies on the street earned. It was the average wage of people who could work hard. If she could earn this amount every day, her son would be able to survive. The difficulty was that no one would take care of her son after she died, and she didn't know whether her poor son would be deceived and bullied by others, but the master said that he was willing to take care of them and their son until the end of their lives, which dispelled her biggest concern. This alone was worth it. Besides, Chen from Dying and Weaving said that they provided food, housing and clothing. I heard that Lee Yuan was different from other places. The food provided was good food for 3 meals a day, the housing provided was a brick house with a proper bed, and the clothes provided were good clothes, with quilted clothes for winter and cool clothes for summer. Everyone was made new, and no tattered ones were used to make up the numbers. If you counted these 3 things carefully, they were much more expensive than 2 old and weak people. Even if they sold their mother and son, the money they got in exchange would not be enough to live like this. This is the Bodhisattva. Shopkeeper, my son is ignorant and doesn't know what a blessing it is that this has come to pass. I kowtow to you and Mr. Lee on his behalf and pray that the Bodhisattva will bless you and may good people be rewarded." The old lady was about to kowtow to Dying and Weaving Chen on the spot. Luckily he helped her up. The Lee family doesn't do this. If you feel bad, please help with the cleaning when you go in. There are many people in their family, and there is often someone who does sewing, washing clothes, cooking, and raising chickens and ducks. Wouldn't it be good for you to do a little? The old lady agreed repeatedly. After a few days, she entrusted the house to the care of the neighbors and moved into Lee Garden with Lee Garden's farmhand. Chapter 71. A new person comes to serve as a helper. Yu Yaoniang's comprehension ability was not enough for him to understand why his life changed overnight, but he liked this change very much. He and his mother moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment. The house was very small, with 2 bedrooms and a little bit of space outside, with a total area of less than 30 square meters. But the house was clean, solid, and airtight and rainproof, much better than the original large and leaky house. Although there was no space for activities inside the house, the garden and fields outside the house were open to everyone. If you wanted to stay outside, to cool off in your spare time, no one would stop you. Even the reserved program for everyone in Liyuan was to sit under the big fruit tree, while working or eating and chatting after dinner. Wu Dalang was ordered to teach Yu Yaoniang and her son about the relationship between Liyuan, because old lady Wu Anzang's mother were not far apart in age, and had similar personalities. The two families got along very well. Wu Dalang simply called her brother. He helped Yu Yaoniang choose the house, which was opposite his own home, so that he could take care of them. Zhang's mother had a full meal, took a hot bath, and combed her sparse hair. She put on the cold-proof scarf given by old lady Wu, and sat under the railing of the corridor outside the house, to chat with old lady Wu. Our master is so kind and generous, but he doesn't make any money selling things outside. There are only a few hundred acres of wasteland at home, and we have to pay taxes, and do corvée for us. Even if the family business is huge, it can't be kept. This is exactly what everyone in Liyuan is worried about, but recently everyone has to work, learn to read and learn arithmetic, so they put aside this worry for the time being. Old lady Wu is the oldest, and knows the most, and is also the one who worries the most. Looking at the worried look of the old sisters, isn't she the same? Old Mrs. Wu said, Master always says that people should retire and enjoy a leisurely life when they reach 60. I think I'm enjoying a leisurely life, and if everyone follows suit and enjoys a leisurely life, won't our master's property go down the drain even faster? So I also found a few jobs that I can do. The 1,000 layer soles that our master often wears at home were made by me. Hey, master is so stupid in this world. Why can't he let young girls make shoes, purses, fan covers, and handkerchiefs for him? Young girls are widows whose husbands have died, and those who are still unmarried are still young girls, so how can they make such small items for him? People will gossip about them. If I make a pair of shoes here, I can save the money for the next pair of shoes. At least it's a gesture. Mother Zhang said, you are right. If we do one thing, the master will spend less money. But I'm blind. What can I do? I can just sweep the house, and I'm afraid of breaking a bowl. Old sister knows a lot. Can you help me think about what I should do? Old lady Wu couldn't figure it out either. The head steward Wu Dalang passed by and overheard, and said, the master has some confidential matters, and he hired two blind people to do them. A few days ago, the master said that he was still short of people, and he had to find those reliable, safe and not so meddlesome blind people from outside to hire a few more. I think that, although Aunt Zhang's eyesight is not very good, her hands are dexterous, and Brother Zhang is about to settle down, so he must be very safe. What a coincidence, the person the master wants is gone. Why don't you ask the master where the work is? Old lady Wu said, in that case, you can go and ask. Your Aunt Zhang is still restrained. Wu Dalang agreed, and sure enough, he told Li Ju the same thing on the day of the incident. Li Ju originally planned to set up a retirement system, but it was strongly protested by everyone. During that period, several old men and women in their 50s and 60s walked around in front of him every day during their breaks. Especially those old men. They swung their arms in the spring breeze with bare arms, not afraid of the cold at all, showing that they were very strong. If they couldn't do heavy physical work, they could do some light work, no problem. So Li Ju didn't care about it anymore. It was really a bit eye-catching. Anyway, they would be paid for the work, and they would get paid for the time they sat, so it wasn't a waste of their labor. The confidential work that Wu Dalang mentioned was actually to sit in the house and unpack the modern goods. Because the workers were all blind, they even saved the money for lamp oil. The work was easy, but a little tedious. The order volume of Liuji Goods Company was a bit large, and the original two blind people seemed a bit slow in shipping. Dyeing and weaving Chin counted that the farthest merchants came from Huaibei and Yunmeng. Obviously, the soap market has expanded to at least 3 or 4 major cities in the province. Now increasing the distribution of goods is not considered dumping, and the impact on the economy and livelihood of the citizens can be ignored. Soap is cheap, but it still costs money. At this time, people's livelihood has just recovered, and people still have deep memories of escaping from the troubled times, so they save a lot. who would be willing to buy this thing that can't be eaten or worn if they don't have extra money. Even if they are willing, they will give priority to buying fields and land. Moreover, in this era, most people are in a state of extreme poverty, and they can't even take out this little bit of extra money. The two blind people work in the small dark room for 4 hours every day. Counting all the work such as unpacking, packing, and carrying, they can peel out about 2,000 bars of soap a day, which is indeed not enough for the market. Dyeing and weaving. Chen is in a hurry. Li Ju asked Wu Dalang to write down the matter of finding someone, and Wu Dalang brought Zhang's mother over. Li Ju said, okay, let's ask the old lady to work there. After all, she is old, so it's normal for her to work slowly. Don't give her what the two workers asked. Don't make people tired. Wu Dalang agreed to this matter, and went back to other things. He had just made it clear about all the internal and external affairs, and at this time, Azu also came back. The construction work at the Poor Relief Center outside was finally completed. Azu brought a few people from Li Yuan back to report. The people at the Poor Relief Center worked slowly, and it took a month and a half to build a few houses. After they were built, they moved in, and let County Magistrate Wang see the situation with his own eyes. It took another few days. At this time, Liuji Goods Store, which paved the cement road, had been selling cement soap and Kingshan pens for more than half a month. Li Ju said, you have worked hard outside. Take a few days off and recuperate. You can arrange the work for these people. I will not take care of this matter. However, I need a special person here. You two can discuss whether there is a suitable one. If not, go out and find one. RZHU smiled and said, don't worry, master. I will help brother Wu with the arrangement. What kind of person do you want? Li Ju said, first, clear articulation. Second, quick response. Third, knowing pinyin. Third, loud voice. Finally, clean and kind appearance, so that people can feel friendly at first sight. I plan to let this person bring a storyteller to the awning outside the door to tell stories, teach pinyin, and guide the local villagers to learn to recognize words. Chapter 72, Poor Child, Miserable Child, Beginning of a Novice Monk, End of a Novice Monk. The person Li Ju wanted was the little teacher who taught pinyin outside every day. He didn't know what the result of this move would be, and he had no way of guessing the audience's reaction, so this little teacher must have strong adaptability, and Li Ju hadn't thought of such a person for a while. Most of the men in Li Garden were honest and simple-minded people, otherwise they would not have lost their family property and been taken in by Li Ju. The most eloquent person was Yu Yaoniang, but Yu Yaoniang had only a little courage, and she would not show her sharp tongue unless it was absolutely necessary. Xiaolian was also quite interesting, but she was too young. Wang Dechen was good, but he had a headache doing the accounts every day, and he was recently learning the financial theories copied by Li Ju, so he obviously didn't have the time. The most suitable person among the remaining people was Azu. Obviously, Azu was okay during the slack season, but he couldn't take care of him during the busy season. Wu Dalang thought for a while and said, Master, I do have a candidate, but I don't know what his master means. As soon as the master was mentioned, Li Ju guessed it. Are you talking about the scholar's clerk? Wu Dalang said, that's right. The county magistrate and Scholar Huang often had contacts, and AZHU was also quite acquainted with Scholar Huang's clerk. He said, the butler is right. Master Huang's clerk is good, and he happens to be learning pinyin. Besides, in fact, the little monk in the temple is not bad. Our county magistrate doesn't like all kinds of people, so he always restricts temples and Taoist temples from buying land, and he is not very willing to issue certificates of ordination. There are many little monks who have not yet been ordained, but just rely on temples to make a living. In Li Ju's concept, monks and Taoists are mainly focused on self-cultivation and research. When this word was mentioned, the first thing he thought of was the kind-looking master, or the angry-looking Shaolin monk. No matter how he looked at it, it had nothing to do with his requirements. He couldn't help but wonder, RZHU, why do you say monks are good? Don't monks devote themselves to Buddhism? RZHU was already used to Li Ju's lack of common sense, and explained in detail, monks and Taoists also have different jobs. For example, when performing rituals and doing Daoist ceremonies, There must be people who play musical instruments, sing, and preach the sutras. This is a division of labor, and how can everyone be qualified? For example, the head and tail novice monks, and the Taoist priests who play the fisherman's drums and awaking, are just like what the master requires. Their voices must be clear and loud, their articulation must be clever and pleasing, their appearance must be fair and pleasant, and they must memorize dozens of books and hundreds of paragraphs. The most important thing is to be flexible and adaptable. They must be able to deal with the newly composed songs and lyrics, the newly recited local Dharma sentences, and even those who come with bad intentions to disrupt the scene. There are also those who preach the sutras in the tea houses and brothels. They have to tell the good stories in the Buddhist scriptures to everyone, and they must sing well, act well, and have skills. Only when they have all the 18 martial arts in place, can they lead the audience to follow. Master, do you think they are following your requirements? Li Ju said, yes. But such people do not lack food to eat, and I always want to let the most miserable and the most helpless people have a place to live first. Therefore, our Li family does not have such people, so we have to look for them outside. First ask Mr. Huang's servant if he can do this. If he can, there is no need to look for him outside. However, the story of the lectures on the classics in the brothels and taverns mentioned by RZHU just now suddenly gave Li Ju new inspiration. In this era, there were already Zaju, and there were several classic scripts. It even became the main mode of entertainment during the turbulent years. However, the performance of Zaju was still at the level of rap. The strict paradigm and monotonous and stereotyped performance techniques made Zaju lose the creative support of a large number of literati during the peaceful years. It did not continue to draw its vitality and declined at the speed of light. On the contrary, brothels and taverns, which have been prosperous since the Tang and Song dynasties, are still prosperous in various places. People from all walks of life perform in these entertainment venues to make a living or preach, which is a prosperous scene. How about bringing in the Southern drama that replaced the Zaju and became the ancestor of the Chinese opera? Bring in several well-known operas with singing, reciting, acting and dramatic music. It's not that Li Ju couldn't do it, but he just felt it was unnecessary for the time being. He wrote the script to promote literacy, using continuous suspenseful stories. To guide adults to learn characters is much simpler than directly teaching 3-character classic and 1000-character classic. Putting these stories on stage for performance will not have this effect. However, having said that, if it is to lead the trend and promote ideas, it seems okay. There are times when the popularity of a region starts from brothels. Isn't it because people in the dust need to dress up more, pay more attention to appearance, and have stronger circulation? Wasi Gaolan is such a place. Li Ju made a note of this matter. This matter is not very important at the moment, and it can be used as a backup for the means of expanding public opinion in the future. Wu Dalong said, Master, my idea is that we can still go outside and find two of our own. The scholar's book boy is good, but he is not one of our family members after all, and he will go back to his own home sooner or later. Wouldn't it be a bit troublesome for us to start all over again? Li Ju smiled and said, not bad, you have such insight. It shows that it is right to ask you to read more. What you said is also a problem. We should find two of our own. It's not anything else. This is a long-term job, at least 3 to 5 years. It is impossible for one person to do it from beginning to end. Even if it is a master with an apprentice, there should be 4 or 5 people. Ask Wang Dechen to remember it, and see if there is any smart child who can be trained in our family. I think Xiaolian is a good one. When she grows up, let her dress up as a boy and teach Pinayan. Report other people like this as well. If it is still not enough, let old Wang go to the pawn shop and ask the old shopkeeper if there is any suitable one. Li Ju paused slightly. As ZHU continued, we know what the master is thinking. The master still wants to give priority to recruiting those poor children whose families are broken and who have no food to eat. Li Ju said, yes. Although I brought those good seeds, I don't know how much I can harvest next year. If the farming method is not correct, it will take a lot of time to harvest enough seedlings. For the time being, food can't be provided to too many people, let alone help too many people. Then, these job opportunities, let's start with the poorest people. Since he had an idea, Li Ju simply took Wu Dalong to Huang Zhi's study and told Huang Zhi that he wanted to borrow his book boy. Huang Zhi was very straightforward. Even if Brother Zion hadn't said it, I would have taken the initiative to bring up this matter. However, my two servants are stupid, and I'm afraid they will miss out on our important matter. I want to teach them myself, but I'm afraid they won't understand Brother Li's meaning and teach them wrongly. If you like them, I'll take them away. Please take the trouble to help me discipline them. Li Ju said, I dare not say discipline, but I'll take them away for use. What should I do? If you need servants, either pick someone from me or bring a few more from home. Huang Zhi said, your people all have their own things to do, so there's no need to add to this. Your family is thoughtful, and it saves more trouble than when I was at home. There's no need to add another one. Let's pass on the message that Shuangyi is coming, and my two servants have to go with them, so there's always one person with me, and these two people are enough. After that, Huang Zhi called the two servants and ordered them to follow Li Ju's arrangements and not to be careless or lazy. Li Ju asked Wu Dalong to write down half of Li Yuan's wages as a long-term worker and give them to the two of them, and asked them to go to the main hall to attend classes the next morning so that they could learn pinyin as soon as possible. After Huang Zhi finished copying 10 chapters of Romance of the Three Kingdoms, they could go out to preach. Chapter 73, The Romance of the Three Kingdoms begins serialization. Huang Zhi was as obsessed with copying the Romance of the Three Kingdoms as he was with his lover. He copied the large character version for Li Ju, while copying a refined version for himself. The two book boys were also very serious about learning pinyin. They wanted to get more money, so they couldn't let such a good job go. Behind them were the suitable children selected by Wang Dechen from Li Yuan in the dental shop. They were brought in for interviews every now and then. Li Ju kept a few of them. It was obvious that, if there were any good ones, they would share the work, mainly the wages. Therefore, they studied very hard. Before long, Huang Zhi's two book boys performed well in the trial lecture. The storyteller he found also memorized the existing stories of Romance of the Three Kingdoms by heart, played 2 Hukin songs with the music given by Li Ju, and learned to use props such as wake up wood and folding fans. Huang Zhi had also copied the existing chapters and had the leisure to write notes carefully. It can be said that everything was ready. Only the east wind was missing. Li Ju counted the days, and before the arrival of the plum rain and the busy farming season, he posted the first 2,000 words of the first chapter on the bulletin board of the awning, pasting both sides, and pasting 2 illustrations at the beginning and end. In another month or 2, the plum rain will arrive, and there are some rare sunny days before that, which is a good time for storytelling and preaching. People nearby, passers-by, and people who rest under the shed were all attracted by the posted pictures. They may not know about 10 eunuchs or princes fighting against Deng Zuo, but the legend of Liu Bei, Guan Yu and Zhang Fen's oath of brotherhood in Taoyuan has been passed down for thousands of years, and is known to everyone, including women and children. As soon as everyone sees the 3 people in the painting, the one selling straw sandals has kind eyes, the big man with a curly beard has angry eyes, and the big man with a square face has loyalty written all over his face. With the background of the peach blossom forest, people will think of Romance of the Three Kingdoms at first glance. The storyteller set up the storytelling table, put down the wake up wood and folding fan, and first propped up the hukin, and played a new tune, but skipped the Linjiangson, which was not easy for ordinary people to understand, and started with the introduction of Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Dear neighbors, relatives and friends, ahem, I'm a storyteller in Deu Tower who begs for food. I'm here to entertain you all. Last month, Mr. Lee from Lee Garden got a great story that has never been told before, so I will tell you all about it. If you are not busy, just listen to it. If you don't like it, you can overturn my stall, and I won't be angry. With the tinkling introduction music, many idle people gathered around, especially those old people, children, and women who do chores at home. They don't have anything fun to do on weekdays. Suddenly, they heard a new story to listen to. They were bored anyway, so they were willing to listen to it for entertainment. After the storyteller finished playing the song, he hit the wake up stick and got to the point. The words in the storytelling are not completely consistent with the original text, and many details are added. For example, if someone is written as a bad person in the book, he may just mention the bad things he did in one sentence. But in the storytelling, the bad guy's behavior must be performed vividly. In Kingston County, the storyteller only tells a few stories in a day. It requires the plot to be compact, complete, with fierce conflicts and suspense. This does not allow too many characters and clues to be crammed into the story volume of a day, and each character must be templated, business card-like, and plate-like, so that when this person is mentioned, the audience can immediately think of this as a good person and this is a traitor. People who appreciate this art are basically the general public, which determines that the storyteller's method of shaping characters cannot be complicated or showy, but must be simple, direct, and straightforward to capture people's hearts. Therefore, the storyteller started with the decline of the Han dynasty and the treacherous ministers who brought disaster to the country, accompanied by the sobbing and passionate music of the Hukin, which made the scene of the chaotic world seem as if it could be seen and heard, and the audience listened with sympathy. Then he changed the topic to the 10 eunuchs who caused chaos in the country and the Yellow Turban Rebellion, and exaggerated the hatefulness of the 10 eunuchs, and mentioned the relationship between the forces of several parties. Then it was the great virtuous teacher Zhang Ju who rose up with a fierce momentum and invaded Yaozhou. He had a good eloquence, and portrayed the characters vividly. The tragic scenes of a chaotic world in the tense wars made people feel like they were there, which made everyone's appetite high. After talking about Zhang Ju, the storyteller told the story of the 3 oaths of brotherhood in Taoyuan. He said that Liu Bei was a great hero, with a very kind temperament, and was not easy to talk to, and he had to give some examples of fabricated stories, to illustrate that when talking about Zhang Fei and Guan Yu. He also did his best to lay a good foundation for the 3 protagonists. After a detailed narration, when the 3 men had sworn brotherhood, and were about to join the army to defeat the bandits, the storyteller closed his folding fan, and with a slight sound, he said, the 3 of them are all rare heroes. Even if there are tens of thousands of small bandits, what is there to fear? But if you want to know how they defeated the bandits, there is a reason. I will not go into details today. I will come back to explain it to you on the 7th day. To know what happened next, please wait for the next chapter. After that, he packed up his things and was really going to go back. At this time, there were already dozens of people who came to listen to the storytelling, and many women were lying on the wall with their children in their arms, listening. They were fascinated, but the storyteller was about to leave. Immediately, the young men standing closest to them started to make a fuss. Don't leave, you've just said so much, why are we going to split up next time? I know you could talk for 2 hours a day in Dayu Tower, how come you only have half the time today? That's right, why are you leaving so soon? Where have we been? Is that all after the Oath of Brotherhood? What's next? I know what's next, we are going to Yaozhou to follow Gongsun and to fight the Yellow Turbans. Old Gongsun is talking about the story of fighting Dong Zhuo, and there are so many people here, why are we going to Yaozhou? Everyone was talking about it, and the storyteller pretended to comfort them for a long time, and finally pretended to be helpless, saying, it's not that I'm delaying on purpose, it's really the book written by our master, I can't quite understand it, and I need you to explain it to us in detail. The master has already written the story to the part where the 3 heroes defeated the bandit army, surrendered to Lu Zhi, and attacked Zhang Ju, but I haven't finished editing the book yet. The story written by the master is on these pieces of paper. If you can't wait, just read it for yourselves. Everyone was itching to stop Master Li and ask him about the rest of the story. Hearing this, they started to shout, it can recognize me with such big characters, but I can't recognize it. How can we read it? Are people like us qualified to recognize characters? The storyteller tried to comfort them. It's very easy to recognize characters. Our master has invented a very simple method. I have tried it and now, in just one day, I can read a few characters. If you want to read it, I will ask a young scholar to teach you. Everyone was still excited. When they heard that there would be scenes of defeating Lu Zhi and attacking Zhang Jiao, they hurriedly asked him to invite the master. The storyteller called Huang Zhi's book boy from the back room and gave him some fake instructions, saying, please forgive me. The master's storybook is so good that no one has heard enough. He also said, please be kind and teach us how to recognize characters. In front of everyone, the storyteller entrusted the matter to the book boy and went back to Lee Garden. As soon as he entered the door, he saw Lee Ju and Huang Zhi sitting behind the door, each holding a rocking chair and a pot of milk tea, chatting and listening to the noise. Chu San Lang, another book boy, and Wu Shuangyi were waiting on the side. Li Ju saw that the storyteller had completed his task successfully and smiled and said, I really did not make a mistake. The storyteller is very capable, speaks well, and is also good at attracting people. He is a talent. Next time you tell stories, I will give you a raise. Gold and silver are not hard to find in this world, but talent is hard to find. Chapter 74. Enlightening the people's wisdom starts from small corners. The competition for the position of book boy in the Huang family is fierce, and the few who can serve as book boys for Master Huang and Master Huang are the best of the best. Even though there is now a place like Liyuan, where there are many people, few things and enough food, as a comparison, Mr. Huang's family is still the most desirable place for people in Qingshan County. Mr. Huang's family is simple, and the masters are also kind. You can read and write with Mr. Huang. If you get his guidance, you can be considered a half apprentice. In the future, you can redeem yourself and conceal your experience as a slave, and you can also take the imperial examination. The court is in need of people, so it is inevitable that it will relax a little on the family background of the characters. As long as the master and the slave family do not take the initiative to stir up trouble, they will acquiesce. Such a good place, and in the prosperous Jiangnan of the literary style. Of course there will be many people competing, and most of the children who stand out in the end are good children. The book boy who was selected by Li Ju to teach ordinary people to read is just like this, clever and serious. He himself had learned Pinyin in the past few days, and knew that, if he taught Pinyin directly, he might turn away the guests. So he said, the old storyteller asked me to read this manuscript to everyone. To be honest, I have never seen this. I will read it word by word, and everyone can listen to it word by word. How about it? Everyone said, read it quickly, read it wherever you want. The book boy read it word by word, and pointed out the words he read with a small bamboo stick while reading. The Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Chapter 1, Part 1. The three heroes swore brotherhood at the feast in Taoyuan, and the hero of the yellow turban was beheaded, and made the first contribution. It is said that the general trend of the world is that after a long period of division, there will be unification, and after a long period of unification, there will be division. After reading the first paragraph, he laughed and said, I was identifying these words just now, and I couldn't understand them very well. Now I know what the first paragraph means. I will read it again, so that everyone can listen to it coherently. If there is anything you don't understand, you can ask, and I will explain it. The leading boy said, if you read it this way, you will have to read until next year. The book boy was not annoyed, and just said, I still have to help the master read, and I can't stand here all day long. If I don't teach you how to read, and you continue to read on your own and still can't understand, won't you want me to read it again? It will be more laborious for me, and you need to be patient. After you understand it, when people come to ask about it later, you can learn and teach at the same time. Isn't it better? After that, the book boy pointed the bamboo pole at the title of the book. These three words are Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which means that this story is a story of the struggle for supremacy between the three kingdoms of Wei, Shu and Wu in the late Han Dynasty. Do you see these phonetic characters next to it? This was invented by our master of the Li family, and it is specially used for people like us who don't know a few words, to spell and learn words. These three sounds, S, N, together form the word three, and these Y and I together form the word righteousness. Everyone, look at the back. The phonetic notation of Yi also includes these words discuss, meaning, and wing. These words are all pronounced Yi. Some people thought this was inexplicable, but some stayed to read the story and started to learn Pinyin. Because the opening narration was simple, the title was easy to remember, the chapter names were easy to remember, and the great trend of the world was also catchy. It didn't take long for everyone to remember these few sentences. Some people who remembered quickly even went to the back of the text to find the words with the same pinyin, and guessed, and they could actually guess some of the story. The book boy taught the first 2,000 words over and over again, and those who were clever at least remembered the plot. In addition, everyone had memorized a few pinyins, and if someone forgot, they could ask each other and remember them. The book boy taught until dusk, and then he went back first, saying that he had to go home to do something, leaving those who had learned, and those who hadn't learned to continue to discuss the story on the board. Those who had learned the pinyin were surrounded by those who came later, and asked what the words on the board meant, and those who had forgotten the pinyin racked their brains to write down the pinyin on the board, so that they could be the first to read the new story next time. Moreover, the feeling of being chased by others to ask what this and that mean is really ecstatic, and I don't want to lose it. The next day, Li Ju asked Chuzan and others to post several pinyin tables under the shed outside, saying that Master Li heard that everyone wanted to learn Romance of the Three Kingdoms by themselves, so he specially ordered this phonetic method to be made public for everyone to learn by themselves. People who came to listen to the story followed the people who learned some pinyin on the first day and learned it one by one. At this time, the storyteller came again, and he still told the story of the first day. The audience then compared the story with the text while listening to the story, and they felt that they learned faster and more comfortably. The storyteller would tell a paragraph 3 or 4 times until the audience was almost bored, and then he would tell the next story. He always stopped at the most important moment, and each time he left the posted part of about 500 words unsaid, thus guiding everyone to read the story by themselves. Later, those who often came to listen to storytelling could read the articles posted on the bulletin board by themselves, and even joked with the storyteller. "Where did you say today? Don't leave it unfinished. Sooner or later, your stall will be overturned, and I will be the one telling the story." The storyteller was not afraid of being overturned. If storytelling was so easy, how could he make a living? The books were not as exaggerated as he said. After a few days, Li Ju set up another shed on the other side of the shed, with a door in the middle. The bulletin board in this shed no longer had stories written on it, but all kinds of things. There were popular science about the farming methods of Li Garden, which clearly described how the Li family made fertilizers, how to pre-treat the land, and what new things they were going to plant. There were also lost and found information, or news, such as the owner's chicken was lost, the owner's pig was lost, a big rock fell on the road to such and there were cracks on the slopes of such and such due to recent heavy rains, which might cause landslides and landslides, etc. There were also reminders of Li Garden's recruitment of short-term workers, and sometimes Li Garden was too busy to handle some work, and it was not cost-effective to hire long-term workers, so short-term workers were hired to do it temporarily, or people were hired to take the work home to do it and then send it back, etc. Before long, people who lived nearby or passed by Li Garden developed the habit of looking at the display board. Unconsciously, they could recognize words even without looking at pinyin. At first they didn't realize it until they read letters, notices, and deeds without the help of literate people. They suddenly realized that they had learned to recognize words, and after a while they learned to write, so they were not blind. Li Ju left a blank space on the bulletin board in the second shed. Others could write and post what they wanted to write. Li Ju called this board open wall. The open wall was empty for a long time, until the first post appeared during the busy farming season. This post was written by Yu Yaoniang and Jiu Music Clothing Store. These 4 words should be circled with flowers and plants. To make it look like a store name, is looking for needlework. Need to be able to cut and sew. Good embroidery is preferred. The wages are piece rate. 20 wen for a large piece, 8 wen for a medium piece, 8 wen for 10 small pieces, and small pieces can be taken home to make. Those who are interested can go to the west corner gate of Li Garden to find Aunt Wu. The handwriting on this post is crooked, and it can be seen that it was written by a beginner. It can only be said that each word is clear and easy to recognize, and each word is annotated with pronunciation, so it is very easy to understand. Among the onlookers, there are many people who have long coveted this open wall, but they are just too embarrassed to post it. Now that they see such ugly words dare to be posted, they are unwilling to lag behind and also write posts and post them. Some businesses advertise Daewoo Tower tells a story of romance of the three kingdoms every day at noon. Tea is 3 cents and a big seat is 18 cents. Some were recruiting workers like Yu Yaoniang and the others. Some were selling goods 3 cents for a chicken or duck. Healthy, go to Aunt Wong at XXXX to buy, and some were buying goods Fu Tea House collects autumn tea. There were also some illegal businesses in Li Ju's eyes, such as the sale of human wives and concubines, etc. These unreliable ones were torn up by Li Ju, leaving only the information about serious life. People who read the news, listen to storytelling, and secretly practice reading, crowded around the tea sheds every day. Every day, these information was updated, and there was no shortage of competitors tearing each other's posts, and even some smart ghosts set up tea and snack stalls. The onlookers were hungry and thirsty, so they had to ask for tea and snacks, right? The smartest ones were the small families opposite, who sold homemade snacks and meals in front of their doors, and ran toilet businesses behind their doors, especially those who lived far away. Did they go home to solve the 3 urgent problems? Of course, they would find people nearby to borrow toilets. With so many people, there are bound to be people selling goods. When there are people selling goods, there are people buying them. The coming and going adds another layer of people. In short, these days, Lee Garden is a bustling place with people coming and going, and it looks prosperous. Chapter 75. Solve the problem for music clothing store. The 2 warnings in Lee Garden slowly became a central area for civilians to learn pinyin and characters, exchange information, and trade goods. It felt a bit like the CBD in the future world. Lee Jiu was a little surprised. It was not a bad thing, but he felt a little uncomfortable because his every move was under the eyes of everyone. Lee Jiu decided to use the side door less often, find 2 people to maintain order outside every day, and clean up the place after people dispersed at night. This was considered acceptable. There must be such a popular place. Such a crowd gathering, as long as the order is controlled, is good for ordinary residents, the Lee family, and the economy of Kingshan County. For example, those who want to buy and sell, find people and things, and do small businesses. It is very convenient. For example, Sanjiu and Yaoniang also recruited many female workers. These new recruits all have families, so they are not willing to devote themselves to Lee Garden. However, if they can do some odd jobs to earn a living, they are willing to do it. Music clothing store has always had good business. Whether it is a luxurious brocade skirt, a romantic gauze skirt, or a simple thick cloth skirt, it has always been sold quickly. As production increased, some problems were also exposed. The quality of the skirts made by different people varies greatly due to their different skills. Yaoniang is willing to give up the material. The clothes she makes are generous, the skirts are large, the crisp styles are dignified, and the soft styles are fluttering, generous and stretchy, which is very pleasing. Sanjiu is good at cutting. She can make clothes according to the needs of customers, making them look taller, thinner, flatter, and plumper. She can do everything. In addition, the clothes and skirts made by some people are more or less mediocre, and some women's needlework is even worse than the most crappy machine-made goods in modern times. The skirts made of the same fabric have to be cheaper than the exquisite ones to be sold. The different price differences have even created a group of bargain hunters who specialize in squatting on unqualified skirts and buy them back at a low price and sell them at a price far beyond the regular price. This incident once affected the reputation of music clothing store. People who bought inferior products at high prices came to the store to ask for an explanation. For several days, there was an endless stream of people. Sanjiu made up her mind and returned all the money. Even if those second-hand dealers sold them at high prices, she returned them at the full price. Those returned inferior products were placed by Sanjiu at the door and burned cleanly in front of everyone. When Sanjiu burned the clothes, Yaoniang and others brought water to guard beside to prevent fire. Yaoniang and the others felt distressed. They felt sorry for those beautiful clothes and the money they had worked hard for several months to make wasted. But Sanjiu convinced them that a man cannot stand without trust. This was the lesson Li Ju taught them. So many foreign merchants came to Kingshan City and specifically asked to buy the glittering golden and colorful moonlight skirt of Music clothing store. Wasn't it because they believed that their clothes were good and luxurious? If they lost their reputation and were accused of passing inferior goods off as superior ones, they would probably be reduced to the same status as ordinary clothing stores in the future. So they were persuaded by Sanjiu and watched the clothes they had worked so hard to make turn into ashes. Some girls who were working hard to make money and waiting for a change in their lives could not help crying. However, Sanjiu's handling method was obviously correct. The defective products were burned in the morning and more orders were delivered in the afternoon. The one who sent the order was a purchaser from a wealthy family in Gusu, and they had never thought of buying clothes from Sanjiu. The textile and clothing manufacturing industries in Gusu were extremely developed, and the clothes they made were not better than those of Sanjiu and hers, but at least they were similar, and the fabrics were still the popular styles in the local area. The purchasers came to Kingshan County to buy soap, and cement, and they also had to buy new clothes, but not for themselves. The clothes worn by wealthy families were mostly made by women and servants, and they would never buy them from outside. The things that were to be purchased were originally intended to be sent to relatives and friends from other places as gifts, and there were several families that were good at making clothes that could be chosen. That day, I heard that the owner of the Music clothing store, which was the first to make Yuhua skirt, had burned all the defective products. The buyer thought that this was a good shopkeeper and would definitely not use broken, damaged, or inferior products to make up the number, so he placed an order for more than 10 sets of clothes and skirts. Please hurry up and make them. I will go back to Sushao after the goods are ordered in the next few days. I really can't afford to delay. To be honest with the shopkeeper, our family bought this to send it to relatives. Our uncle and aunt are serving as imperial envoys in Beijing. If they like it, your family will also have face, right? The buyer said all the good things, added some money, and agreed to pick it up in a few days. Sanjiu knew that the current staff could not complete this number, but thinking that they had just lost everything, this order could boost people's morale, and the girls would definitely not be willing to give it up, so she took it with a stiff upper lip. If there are not enough people, you have to recruit people, so Sanjiu and Yu Yaoniang are recruiting workers. They recruited many people who are interested, some are willing to, so find pieces at home, and some want to take them home to make. There are always 17 or 18 people. Sanjiu was relieved, and carefully communicated and tested each woman who signed up. However, among those who signed up, many people's stitches were not necessarily very good, and they made clothes as they pleased, and some could only do simple flat stitches. There were only a handful of people who could really keep up with the needs of the clothing store and make beautiful clothes, which made Sanjiu very worried. At this time, Li Ju was free, and Huangju's family seemed to have some minor problems, so he went home temporarily. No one urged Li Ju to write a book, so Li Ju gave himself a holiday, asked the mutant Shuzhen to accompany him, and looked around his home. The crops were growing well, and the fruit trees were blooming. Wu Dalong and the farmhands carefully watched the pollination to prevent missing anything. The workers were still working diligently, with smiles on their faces. When they saw Master Li, they would run over from afar to greet him. Some of them would even ask if he had any instructions. The people who were resting were not lazy either. Some were eating, some were doing their own chores. Everywhere there was a scene of hard work by the working people. The busiest people were Sanjiu and others in the back house. The order from Gusu almost kept them busy. If they were asked to secretly use their working time to do private work, they would definitely not be able to do it. However, they could not complete the order, even if they only used their private time, which made Sanjiu and Yu Yaoniang anxious. Li Ju found that Sanjiu and others were abnormally busy, so he stood at the door with his hands folded and watched for a while, until a girl came out to get water, and found him at the door, and called out, which alarmed the people who were working inside. Master, you are here? Is there anything you want to tell me? Sanjiu hurriedly invited Li Ju to sit down at the upper seat, poured tea and brought it over, saying, you just like to laugh at us without telling me. How could that be? Li Ju took the tea in his hand, but didn't drink it, just held it. What difficulties have you encountered? I heard something about Gusu Chen, and someone is missing. Sanjiu and Yaoniang looked at each other and both blushed. How could they feel embarrassed when they didn't handle their own affairs well and let the master worry about them? However, what if the master really has a way? Sanjiu lowered her voice, not daring to look up at him, and replied, "The Chen family from Gusu came to buy clothes and gowns. They want more than a dozen sets, about 30 or 40 pieces in total. They want fine workmanship, not simple ones. We don't have many people here who can make such neat clothes, so we can't finish this order. I thought about hiring a few more temporary workers outside." Unexpectedly, many people came to sign up, but when I looked at the work carefully, either the needlework was not good, or the clothes were not made well. There were always deficiencies here and there. There are only 3 or 4 people in total, and they can only make small pieces. That's why we are worried. Li Ju didn't care much. What's the big deal? Since people in Gusu are happy to ask you for clothes, it means you are not worse than the tailors in Gusu. This is a good thing. If you can't finish it, just stop working in our house first. Just treat it as taking a day off, and make up for it later. If you still can't finish it, add 2 more candles at night. It doesn't cost much. Speaking of candles, Li Ju's mind was crooked again. This is also a good business. Candles are consumables. Using candles can extend the activity time, and maybe increase productivity, Sanjiu said, but there will be many such things in the future. Do we have to take leave frequently? We don't want to be driven out by the master. Even if this clothing store is closed, we can't abandon our own family affairs. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.